our head coach of our local football program, Bronco Mental.
The details themselves with the right preparation can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Ladies and gentlemen, from La Casa de los Lobos, the Pit, here at the University of New Mexico, let's get ready to rumble!
Sorry about that. How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Ryan Tamori, letting everything loop. Let me hit you with the triple A.
Hey!
Thank you, Mr. Robin Thicke. Welcome to the Pit Press Live. My name is Ryan Tamori. Busy show tonight. We will preview UNM and Air Force as the Air Force Academy comes down this weekend. We're a week away from Mountain West Conference Basketball Media Days. You think I'd be much more excited? I am. I always love going to Vegas. Want to thank our sponsors, Affordable Services, Affordable Solar, Hydro Bar, Abrazo Homes, Turquoise Desert Tap Room. Want to introduce, and yeah, the Padres just cut the lead to 1. Teoscar Hernandez hit a grand slam. And I have some crow to eat about Diego Pavia, but still, what would Jesus do? Would he urinate on your neighbor's lawn or in his house. Let me introduce my business partner in crime, Mr. Hey, that's 13 years of private Catholic school education.
Uh-oh.
I guess Eric can't hear me.
You cut out there.
Oh,
Hey,
my
what's
bad.
up,
I was
Ryan?
introducing you.
Yeah, no, you're good. Hey, good evening, guys. Yeah, Cowboys came off a win. Happy about that. Lobos are favored on Saturday. Second time this year. So looking forward to that. And we're honored to have Mr. Dr. John Barnes joining us
Mr.
this
Doctor?
evening. So, Mr. Doctor.
Mr. Dr. Lady, if you've ever watched Mystery Science Theater 3000. Okay, I'm crashing and burning here. Busy show tonight. Our first guest is here, Mr. Dr. John Barnes. He's in the, want to make sure I've got this right, the Professor of Sports Administration, Department of Health, Exercise, and Sports Sciences. We'll be with him in a second. At 8:15, Sean O'Toole from Mountain West Wire. He covers Air Force football. And our usual suspects this week, we're having Nick Coppola on earlier from the Las Cruces Sun News, talk about New Mexico State. They play Jacksonville State and Rich Rod tomorrow night. We're in 55 straight days of football. You got to love it. He will come on, talk some Aggie football with us. It's kind of a you-know-what show, shit show down in Las Cruces. Then, as always, our favorite resident Lobo linebacker and family member of current Lobo football members, Mr. Ben Weissong, who's always amped to join us. We really appreciate him. Rick might be joining us later. Not sure. Ed and Nick will have the Volcano Vista quarterback tomorrow night, and his name escaped me. I believe Elijah Hansen. He will be on at 7, so look forward to that. Again, busy show tonight. We will move now to our first guest. As mentioned, he is a professor at the University of New Mexico in the Sports Administration Department, in Sports Administration program, I guess. I hope I have this right. Department of Health, Exercise, and Sports Science. He also graces us with his presence as the PA in the UNM football press box. Always enjoy talking to him. I did it, Eric. Dr. John Barnes. Doctor, how you doing?
Well, thanks you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a long time. I know it's been a while. You would ask me to come on, and so finally I'm able to be here. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We really appreciate it. Eric, I don't know if I want to start with you with the first question, but it's all yours. He's your guest.
Yeah, well, I'm going to preface this by saying that I'm actually an alumni of the Sport Administration program at UNM. And when I got my undergrad at New Mexico Highlands, the first person I called was Dr. John Barnes and Mr. Todd Seiler. Not Mr. But I'm not sure. Is Todd still around?
Todd is definitely around. He's gonna finish this year, and then he's gonna come back next year, and then after that we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So really just want to introduce John. Again, thanks for joining us tonight. Just kind of who you are, and then I want to introduce to our guests kind of what the Sport Administration program is. I know Ben Weissong, who's going to be joining us later tonight, is actually an alumni as well, which I didn't know, but he tweeted something out about that too. So
he's not an alumni of our program, but he had me as I was
gotcha.
Of his. In fact, my first year teaching at UNM, he was in one of my classes.
Gotcha.
So please me know in that he's on here tonight.
Okay. Well, before we kind of go on a little bit about you, can you kind of just give our viewers, our listeners, just kind of a rundown background of what the Sport Administration program is? It's part of the education department, I believe, right? And human sciences.
Yeah. So the University of New Mexico's Sports Administration program is a master's level and PhD level program housed in, as Ryan said, in the Department of Health, Exercise, and Sports Sciences. And we also are in the College of Education and Human Sciences. We were one of the original sport management programs in the country. When I went to school at UNM, I got my doctorate here. We were one of only 3 PhD programs in the country. And so it's expanded quite a bit in the last 20 years, but we were kind of the OGs in that regard. And because of that, there are leaders in sport organizations around the country that are graduates of our program, including Down south at New Mexico State, the athletic director there, Mario, is a graduate of our program. The athletic director at Georgetown is a graduate of our program. The former head of the NJCAA was a graduate of our program. Some recent positions that were filled by our graduates is you both know Ryan Berryman. He is now the CFO for University of Washington Athletics. The chief operating officer for Washington State University Athletics, John Harlow, is a graduate of our program, and then we have faculty and administrators throughout the country, different universities. So we are very proud of our program.
Oh, very interesting, intriguing program. I loved being a part of it. It introduced me to this kind of side of sports, collegiate sports. It introduced me to the New Mexico Bowl and Jeff Symbieta. Amber Martinez is actually a really good friend of mine. I know that you're really close connected with Amber as well.
She's an alum as well.
Yeah, so really cool. And for anyone watching, if you guys want to know more about the sport administration program, I did link down in the comments on our YouTube channel a direct link to the educational page at UNM to kind of find out a little bit more and how to get involved.
Absolutely. If just as a preface, it doesn't matter what undergraduate degree you might have. If you're looking at getting a master's in sports administration, your undergraduate degree, we don't use a GRE for admissions. So you could click that link and you'll see the application process. You could also find our emails and just reach out to any of the faculty in our program, and we'll be happy to give you information on the application process.
Yeah. Right on. And you can find him on Twitter too. You got a Twitter handle. It's Dr. JC1.
Oh, what is my Twitter handle? I don't even know. Yeah, I'm on Twitter somewhere. You could find me.
Got it. Cool. Well, kind of getting into the weeds here, but you not recently, but 2020 came out with a book. You published a book based on
J.C. Barnes 1, not Mr. Doctor. Dr. J.C. Barnes 1. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I wrote a book about college athletics. There it is. Same Players, Different Game, an examination of the commercial college athletics industry. I had that project in my mind for years because I do have my work experience background includes a lot of work in college athletics. And so in addition to a lot of the research that I've done, there were a lot of things that I kind of wanted to put together in a book. And I had a great editor at University of New Mexico Press. He's no longer with UNM Press, but Clark Whitehorn was the person who really got me set up to be able to put this thing together. Unfortunately, it came out on March 1st, 2020. So 10 days before everything kind of shut down because of COVID. So I didn't get a chance to market it too much. And I didn't necessarily make a lot of money off of it, but it got critical acclaim. It was given the highest recommendation from the online magazine of the American Association of Academic and Research Libraries, and that was really kind of a big thing for me. But I'm really proud of the book. It's almost going to be obsolete because the industry of college athletics is changing so much. But still, I think if anybody's interested in learning about sort of how it is that we are where we are in Division I college athletics, it would be a good read for anybody who might want to find out more about not just the athletics part, but how athletics fits into higher education, et cetera.
What is your opinion now on everything that's kind of transpired over the last few months within college athletics and commercializing college athletics? And that's kind of the whole reason why there's this conference realignment and shift. It's all about media, and that's kind of what this book talks about a little bit, right?
Yeah, I go into the first chapter. I talk about higher education and how it is that athletics is vital to schools in order to drive recruitment. I go into the history of academic supports. I spend one chapter talking about the bifurcation of Division I, so the power, quote unquote, Power Four and everybody else. And If you're asking my opinion of the way things are going right now, I would say that it's 40 years in the making. 1984 was really where everything that we're seeing right now started, and based on a Supreme Court case. And I could fill you in on that in a second. So, yeah, if I were going to use one word to describe the evolution of college athletics that's going on right now, I would say it's inevitable. And I think you could even take it further that the inevitability of Division I athletics is that the Power Four, those schools, they will eventually be away from the NCAA. And I think it's going to be sooner than later, probably based on the length of television contracts.
I'm not sure if you were just updated on the news recently today that came out. I don't know the name. The name of the writer.
Oh, the Rudy Project.
Yes, the Rudy Project. What do you know about that? Or
well, that was new to me.
It
doesn't surprise me. So the leaders of the Big Ten and the SEC were planning on getting together this week anyway to talk about how they might want to go forward together. But this Rudy Project really kind of came out of nowhere, but it looks as though there's a venture capital group out of Los Angeles and New York called Smash Ventures, I believe. And they have given to the Power Four conferences a blueprint for how it is that they can exist by themselves. 70 schools with 3 different tiers, and a lot of cash. And I don't know if that's the proposal that's going to work, or there's another one that's being talked about right now with ESPN and Disney and the SEC and Big Ten. And I what I think is going to happen is you're going to see a lot of these proposals show up, and eventually the big schools will figure out how it is that they could live independently from everybody else. And I'm not sure if I think that that's a bad thing, to be honest with you.
Well, just for some of the people that don't know what was released today or what kind of hit, but it was $9 billion is what they were estimating over the next 12 years being infused into this basically quote unquote Power Four conference, which is going to be your SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC, a 70-team conference essentially. But what that does is it cuts out all the G5. So the arrangements is driven towards driving media marketing dollars, right? But eliminating all the G5, the FCS matchups, and just targeting big time power on power matchups the entire season. And then kind of driving towards like a tournament play factor at the end, or like a playoff. But it completely removes the G5, which would be the Mountain West. I still new Pac-12 is considered that, even though they think that they're kind of in that conversation, which I don't think they are, but it really hurts. It hurts a conference like the Mountain West. It hurts a school like an athletic administration like UNM that's really trying to become nationally relevant again, especially in the basketball phase. I don't know if you have anything to add on to that, but what do you think the implications, if this deal were to come to fruition, what that does to a school like UNM?
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on the negative towards UNM to a certain extent. The playing field is so unlevel now, and that's happened over the last 20 years. Coach Wysong will agree because he was there when I first showed up at UNM in 2006. 2007, we played a back-to-back home-and-home series in football with University of Arizona, and we beat them twice. The year before I got here, we beat Missouri. We played them at home the year I got here and played them pretty tough. But 20 or so years ago, we could play with the Power Five. The resources have just gotten so skewed towards them and away from us that the playing field is so unlevel that I don't know if I think it's sustainable for schools like UNM or any of the schools in the group of five to be able to keep up with what the Power Five has to offer. And now, especially when we're starting to look at pay for play, eventually we are going to have pay for play. And even in our current paradigm of NIL, it's all about the money, and whoever has the most amount of money is going to be able to have the most resources, and those resources are the players. So I don't know if I think that we could ever play on a level field with those schools anymore. And maybe it's time for us to be able to start to think about who can we play with, because the reality is those power schools don't want anything to do with us. So no matter how much we yell and scream about it, it's just not going to change. So I think it's incumbent upon the leadership of schools at our level to start to think differently. How is it that we could put together college athletics that's entertaining, that's competitive, compelling, a compelling watch, and not have to constantly be digging for more and more revenue?
That's kind of where my headspace is usually at. And you can ask Ryan or anyone else that joins our show, is I'm always kind of looking at the business analysis side of things, revenue, revenue splits, revenue shares within conferences. We actually had the opportunity to have Gloria Navarez on our show. I know Ryan interviewed her at Mountain West Media Day, but she came on separately, interviewed with him and I on one of our Morning Howl shows, and just kind of talked about the Mountain West, where it was headed, what the future plans were. But this was kind of before that news hit a couple weeks ago with the Pac-12 basically plucking half the Mountain West to go out west. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that specifically, because I was able to kind of break down off of Jeff Grammer's article in the Albuquerque Journal. I did take some key points I also had to do a little bit of studying to figure out what some of these terms and terminology was used, but the Memorandum of Understanding, the grant of rights, the deal essentially runs through June 30th of 2032. And it's not necessarily a contract, but it was just the 8 remaining members agreeing to bind together to kind of work towards keeping the conference in existence. Right. And I think what they're hopeful to do is to rebuild the conference based off of that $100 million in exit fees that is going to be owed to the Mountain West on the departing universities, and then what the Pac-12 is going to have to pay for the poaching fees, right? And in this memorandum, it also talks about the media rights deal, the Mountain West tournament, and some of the news with like the Mountain West offices moving into Las Vegas. So I'm just going to show you some figures, and feel free just to chime in, because I want to get your take, your kind of like knee-jerk reaction. But here's what I was able to kind of pull from Jeff Grammer's article. Basically, the Mountain West is going to divvy up that $61 million collected in exit fees, with 11.5% going to UNM, Nevada, San Jose State, and Wyoming will get that. And then I think there was like another 5% that was going to be designated towards Hawaii. But when you look at figures like that, and then for a school like UNM that operates on the budget that they do, what does that type of money, the extra type of money, do for athletics?
Well, I think I don't know what UNM is considering. I've been following my other alma mater, which is UNLV, and I was actually really happy that UNLV and Air Force decided to stay in the conference. UNLV's talking about using that money to pay down debt and to probably to try to pay the football coach a little bit more. My sense would be UNM is probably going to use a little bit of that money to pay down debt as well, because they're still paying debt from the pit renovation, plus the new fitness center, the New Mexico Mutual's fitness weight center on the south end of the football field. And so there's probably a little bit of where that's going to go. They may use some of that for coaches' salaries as well. But when you have a one-time allocation of funds, it's really, there's nothing long-term that I think you could do with that. Like I say, debt servicing is probably going to be your best bet to try to lower your payments, et cetera. But in regards to the entire Pac-12 or Pac-10 or whatever they're calling themselves now, I didn't understand that at all. I thought that Washington State, Oregon State would come to the realization that being in the Mountain West is probably going to be the best bet for them, and I still think that. My guess is that egos at those schools probably said otherwise, And then all of a sudden, then you had the other schools. San Diego State's always been itching to move on to someplace else. Boise State's always been itching to move on to someplace else. Utah State, I think they jumped because they had the opportunity. But at the end of the day, I don't see benefit for them having moved there. I don't see them getting television contracts that are that much better than what the Mountain West gets. I do like the idea that they're a very regional conference, but so are we. And I've been listening to some of the speculation about who else the Mountain West might get. I'm happy with UTEP. I was surprised they were talking about Toledo and Illinois State or Northern Illinois. I didn't understand that. I did understand Texas State, and I was actually kind of disappointed that they didn't decide to join us because I do think that it would introduce our conference into the Texas market. And I think Texas State is actually a school on the rise when it comes to football. But all of this, I think, is just sort of, it's just a lot of noise around how everything is going to eventually fall out. And the eventuality is, in a market economy, the haves and the have-nots become quite split. So if you look at even our economy here in the United States, the amount of wealth that's being held by one small group of people is pretty astronomical. There's something called the Gini Index, which I wrote about in the book, which it's a measure of the concentration of wealth within a country. And you're seeing concentration of wealth in the power conferences, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. They don't share very easily, and why should they? They're out for themselves. And like I say, it's capitalism 101 that is really shaping Division I athletics.
Focusing more on UNM, and a hot topic right now is the athletic director search. And UNM hired a third party, an outside party, to go and assemble a search. Do you know anything? Any specifics you can't share?
No, I'm following what Sean Ryder is putting out. I'm not privy to anything. I don't even get anything from casual conversations with athletic department people. Ed Manzanares was just in one of my classes this week. And thank you, Ed, if you're watching. He was great. And I don't even think that they are far enough along to know what's going on, other than they just posted the job today. They're using a search firm, which is a good idea. What I will say is I think this hire is going to be extremely important for the university, for the athletic department of the university. I believe we have really good leadership in place in the university with Dr. Stokes. I know that she is very much in support of college athletics and UNM athletics. She goes to events. She knows what's going on. She's deeply involved. And at our institution, our athletic director has typically been, and I assume it'll be when we hire a new person, is actually a vice president. And so that structure is really good because that keeps the university president and the athletic director close. And I think that's really important when it comes to how it is that athletics operates on a college campus. But based on the rough waters and all the turbulence in Division I athletics, if you don't have a smart person at the head of the athletic department, you're going to be left behind. And that's just not something that you want to see. And so I'm hoping that they hire somebody good, but I really don't know who are going to be candidates.
Can you talk about the job that Eddie Nunez did? And are you shocked he left? Sorry to cut you off there, Eric.
To answer the second question first, I was a little bit surprised that he left for that job because I think he could have held out for a better job, to be honest with you. Although I think he's a good fit for the Houston job because I think Houston is one of the, if not the most underfunded, least funded power conference schools out there. So he's going to have to drive revenue, and he did a really good job of that here. I think he did an excellent job here. He quieted all the turmoil. He brought the department together. He made some really good hires, put people in good positions to get jobs done. I think in general, our athletic department runs really well, especially for the resources that we have. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Lobo alum. I look at athletic departments across the country and I see schools that have way more resources than ours that don't really accomplish as much as we do. So I think Eddie did a really good job of that. If you talk to athletic department employees, they loved him. And, that's not something you hear all the time in athletic departments either. So, he came in, there was, all the stuff that had happened with the previous athletic director and the finance situation and the PR situation, with our former football coach, et cetera, et cetera. And there were some times when I saw Eddie when he was first here and he looked like he had he was a deer in the headlights. And I thought, geez, is he going to stay here that long? But he sure did. And he put everything into putting UNM on a good course. And I think he did a really good job at that. So whoever's going to come in is going to have big shoes to fill. The one thing I will say that Eddie did better than a lot of people who come to New Mexico is he understood pretty quickly that New Mexicans are not typical humans. We are different. We think differently. And I think he understood that. And I think whoever comes in has to quickly understand who New Mexicans are and who Lobo fans are, because Lobo fans have different ways of thinking. And so that person is going to have to be able to understand that. But the person who definitely comes in is going to have to be able to navigate some pretty rough waters, lots of change over the next 10 to 15 years.
One or two more questions left for you, Dr. Barnes. But one thing that we didn't specifically cover in your courses when you were a professor at the sport administration program was the idea or even the theory of NIL and how that's pretty much taken off and reshaped college athletics in that front. And when you look at an entity like 505 Sports Venture Foundation, we've actually established a really good relationship with Kurt and McKinsey. McKinsey is actually scheduled to come on our show tomorrow evening to just talk more about what they're doing. But where is your stance on NIL, and how well is UNM supported by 505? And I think they're lucky to have someone like Kurt in the position that he is to put together something like that, because it's top notch and probably one of the better collectives in the country.
I agree. I can't tell you specifics about what they do. I do know that Kurt is deeply dedicated to making sure that what he does provides maximum benefit for the athletic department. If you give me a little leeway, I'll tell you what I think about NIL. And I mentioned 40 years in the making is where we are right now has really started in 1984. And it started with the Supreme Court case. It was Board of Regents versus NCAA. And the Board of Regents was actually the Board of Regents of University of Oklahoma and of University of Georgia. And as a representative of something called the College Football Association, which is essentially what is now the Power 5 schools, the NCAA at the time held all the control of the media rights for every institution in the NCAA. So whoever was going to be on television, it was up to what the NCAA said. And they limited the amount of times any one school could be on any one football team could be on television 1 or 2 times a year. So when I was growing up, I got to see a limited amount of college football games because that's what the NCAA wanted, at least live. In the 80s, when you had the advent of ESPN and cable television, not only was there a market for college football, there was the means to be able to distribute it. And those schools, and I believe rightfully so, said, we want to control our own media rights. And so they sued the NCAA for it. And what was really interesting about that lawsuit is they used a business law to plead their case. And the Supreme Court accepted that, which is they used antitrust law, which is typically applied to businesses. And in the Supreme Court's decision, which sided with those schools that in the College Football Association, they said essentially they said college athletics is a business. So that was when we realized that this is a business that exists in a market. And the one thing that the judges said in the decision was, even though it's a business, the athletes are not to be paid. They still have to be amateur because that's the basis of college athletics. It took all the way to 2015, the Ed O'Bannon case, for Claudia Wilkin, the judge in that case in the 9th District Court, in the 10th District Court. No, excuse me. Yeah, the 10th District Court. She said, this doesn't happen in court cases very much. She said that the Supreme Court was actually wrong in their decision that the athletes shouldn't get paid. And so she was the one who said that the athletes, because this, if you remember, the Ed O'Bannon case was a suit against not only the NCAA, but EA Sports for using names, images, and likenesses without any of the athletes being paid for it. So she allowed for that immediately. She also set up for a trust fund setup, which was eventually struck down. But from 1984 to 2015, you had a business model where the labor didn't get paid. And so now, since 2015 and continuing through all the rest of the court cases, we just had Judge Wilkin actually just made a decision in the House case yesterday, which she's looking at approving that settlement. Now you're starting to see that the athletes, the labor, are allowed to get paid. And I believe that that's really the American way. And that in and of itself is based on antitrust law. You can't restrain somebody's trade. So the NIL piece, I think, has been the easiest part for athletics. Because if you think about it, the athletic department, even though they want to bring it in-house, they can also stay at arm's length, and they don't have to make the decisions about things like Title IX and who should get more money, the first string quarterback or the third string punter. Those things are going to be difficult to figure out. What's going to happen now when we go past just NIL and we get to when it eventually comes down through the courts, the athletes, especially at this level, are going to be seen as employees. And that's going to be a huge paradigm shift. I think that's one of the reasons why I think the new athletic director is going to have to be really good at what he or she does, at making sure that University of New Mexico fits nicely into that model. But I think it's an eventuality that the athletes are going to get paid as employees. And again, I don't have a problem with it. It's different than the college athletics that I grew up with. But the reality is, if I want those kind of college athletics, I could watch Division III, and I think Division III will, and the NAIA schools, I think they will always kind of stay the same. I'm not sure what D2 will do. I went to a D2 school for undergrad. I'm curious to see what they end up doing. But because it's changed, I don't think it's bad. I think it's actually okay. And I also think that when you have the athletes as employees, you're going to have to collectively bargain with them. They're going to unionize. I actually think that's going to help because you could collectively bargain things like contract lengths so that they can't just enter the transfer portal every year. So you could have some stability in that regard. You could also have a salary structure so that you could actually have some sort of cost containment and salary certainty. I think if all of the leagues have done that, then all of the universities that play sports are going to have to do that as well. And I think that's going to be really interesting. But if you think about it, right now, the college athletic atmosphere is pretty wide open because there is no restraints on it. Contrast that with how the NFL does their business. Every team gets pretty much the same amount of revenue. Every team can spend the same amount on their player talent. And so it becomes a meritocracy as opposed to who has the most resources. And I think most sports fans would like to see, I want to know what's on the field, not necessarily who has the most amount of money. Do I think that the big schools like the Alabamas and the Ohio States, the SCs and whatever, Notre Dames, are they ever going to not be powers because of this? No, they'll always be powers. But I think, as I mentioned, it's inevitable. The shift is inevitable. It's going to come. And so you just have to be able to prepare for it.
His name is not Mr. Doctor. And again, I'm going to go back to Mystery Science 3000. I'll post that clip. Dr. Lady, Dr. John Barnes I just want to make sure I've got it right. Professor of Sports Administration in the Department of Health and Exercise and Science and Sports Science at the University of New Mexico. And I've had a pleasure of meeting him the last few years as the PA announcer in the UNM football press box.
Yes,
University Stadium press box.
Frank is dumb enough to let me come into his press box every home football game, and I try to not screw it up as much as possible.
One, you're not dumb, and never say that Frank is dumb enough. Never throw a comment like that in front of me with a softball. He knows he's my favorite person on this show. I really appreciate your time. I learned a lot there. This has been a seed that's been put in my mind to maybe go pursue a master's degree in this. Thank you for your time. We'll definitely have you on down the road, and looking forward to see you on Saturday. And thank you for letting me know, the degenerate gambler, that UNM was 6.5, because I did not know that.
6.5 point favorites. Yep, minus 6.5. Go ahead.
No. I was going to ask you. We didn't even get your opinion. Like, I know you're in the press box, and we're all blah blah. We're all objective. I want your thoughts on this football season thus far, very quickly.
I'm not unbiased. I'm a Lobo. So if we get this win this week, I think we could actually make some noise, because we have Utah State down the road. I think they're beatable. We have Wyoming down the road. I think they're beatable. I think we could actually make a little bit of noise this season, maybe a little bit more than what people were, because I think the over-under for our season was 2 wins. I think we could beat that. As long as we beat the Aggies, I was happy. I'm really happy about that. We end the season in Hawaii. I think that's a winnable game as well. So how can you not love Devin Dampier? And I think our running back core has done really well. I'd like to. We have offense. We can score points. It's just a matter of whether or not we could stop people. And I see that coming around. One of the things I see this year is it looks like football. It passes the eye test. We haven't. We blew the lead against Montana State. We probably weren't going to be able to beat Arizona and Auburn, but I just think we're playing. I see improvement, so I'm hopeful.
No, we appreciate that. Again, Dr. John Bards, Professor of Sports Administration in the Department of Health, Exercise, Sports Sciences at UNM. We appreciate your time. We'll see you Saturday. I learned a lot there. Have a good rest of your Tuesday night. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks for having me, and keep up the great work. You guys are doing great.
We appreciate it. Again,
Thanks,
that was Dr. Not Mr. Doctor, Dr. John Barnes. Appreciate his time. Take a quick commercial break. I don't know how anybody has not commented on X or YouTube to talk about a certain team in Flushing, Queens. But, here we are when we return. Sean O'Toole, Mountain West Wire, talk some Air Force Academy football, as well as the other 2 academies. I'm digging Army and Navy. I think it's for the country at this point. At least we're showing support for those 3 academies. My name is Ryan Tamori. This is Eric Malton. We will be right back.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
That Mountain West commercial is like a movie trailer. Once again, great live radio. Let me fix my camera there. Hey, how does everybody do? Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to the show. My name's Ryan Tamori. Some nights I'm really prepared for this, and other nights I'm not, and it sometimes depends on my day job. And today was one of those days, so I'm sorry. Special thanks to Mr. Dr. John Barnes. Dr. John Barnes of UNM is a professor in the sports administration, professor of sports administration in the Department of Health, Exercise, and Sports Sciences. Appreciate him. I'm very shocked that our comments haven't blown up. Jimmy H., one of the usual suspects. I was too busy listening to Sports Doc to comment. Great guest. We appreciate that. Yeah, we have been trying to get him on for a while. Absolutely love him. I thought that was a very informative conversation. Not to sound cliche. All right. Going to the rest of our guests tonight. Before we get to the next guest, Ben Weissong will be joining us, the resident linebacker, office linebacker. Hey, I haven't heard that in a while. Office linebacker. And then Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. Jeremiah O'Toole. Let's go Hoops for Hope Joe Pa. I'm going to gather that's related to Sean O'Toole. I figured that out now. Nick Coppola, Las Cruces Sun News. But first, always appreciate this gentleman. Writes for Mountain West Wire, and he covers the Air Force Academy and their football program there, pushing almost 11 o'clock on the East Coast. So I appreciate his time. Mr. Sean O'Toole. Sean, how you doing?
Hey, I could not be any better. Thanks for having me. That was awesome, Dr. Barnes. That was really good, man. I was pretty fortunate to get tucked in and get to witness some of that.
I appreciate your patience because we do. I do not abide by time. Ask Ben or Nick. I don't abide by time on this show, so I don't know what it doesn't exist.
I'm a father of three. You mistake me for someone who has a life? Are you kidding me?
I have one, and he acts like an old man. He has his Nintendo Switch. Sometimes he will crawl in bed with me, and he has his Nintendo Switch, and I'm still watching something. If it's a bad movie review, it's some form of a sporting event. And he will hand me his Nintendo Switch after I let him watch whatever he's watching on YouTube, like a terrible parent. And he's like, I'm going to bed. And I look and it's like 8:45. I'm like, who are you? You're like a 40-year-old man. So
sounds like
I don't.
Pretty good parenting. Look at that. You've inherently instilled the sense of consciousness about his bedtime. Look at that, man.
I know. It's unusual. And he sometimes props up like he's reading a newspaper. I don't get it. Maybe that's in the blood. I don't know where to start. So I think, and I texted you earlier today, this is me doing a great job. I think I'll start with the first thing. This is not a traditional Troy Calhoun Air Force team. They have only beaten FCS Merrimack. I didn't know Merrimack had a college football team until I saw that on the schedule. They haven't looked that well. To me, that's a bit of a disappointment because Troy Calhoun is the most tenured head coach in the conference. You and I talking off the record, a lot of new faces. What is boiling down to this kind of rough start for Air Force to the 2024 season?
Yeah, well, yeah, you talk about an experienced coach, right? That his cumulative tenure there is more than that of, or his tenure is more than the cumulative tenure of the rest of the coaches at their schools, 18 years, I believe. So, yeah, it's tough, man. Every team deals with turnover, right? The academy is no different, but this year they've had 30 different players start their first game this year. 30. There's going to be a lot of changing of the guard as far as players. They had a very experienced team last year, but the expectations, right, at Air Force particularly, you kind of become a victim of your own success, right? There's a strong belief that there's a program and a philosophy there where they develop players and they reload. But man, if you look at where the positions were, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle offensively, defensively, special teams, you name it. And in an area where you never see, right, is discipline. I mean, if you look, this game this week, right, the Lobos, their margin for penalty ratio is substantially better than Air Force's, right? It's just not something that you see from an Air Force team. Again, a lot of that you got to chalk up to experience. But They did. They transitioned. I mean, they got a couple players playing on Sundays right now from last year's team, right? And Bo Richter and last year's Thorpe winner, Trey Taylor, right? They're on NFL rosters. But there's a lot of other really, really good players too that have moved on. It's not as if like they didn't lose good players, but no one wants to hear that. Everyone loses players. It's just this year was big. And of course, if you talk to any of the other two military academies, particularly, or at nausea on a lot of the broadcasted games, you're going to hear about the COVID turnbacks, right? The players that got an extra year at Air Force that are now gone. There's a lot of really good, really experienced players that left from that team that had that extra year and developed, and man, it showed last year. And going back to their only victory, right? It was an FCS win this year. They've not beaten an FBS team since October of last year in the regular season, right? Which is kind of was niche statistics, but they had that long losing streak, right? It started last year. They were ranked 17th. They went to Army, played Army at Mile High, and they got punched in the mouth, man. And they never recovered. When they lost that game in the first weekend in November, they lost their last 4 regular season games. They hammered JMU pretty well in the bowl game, which if you remember last year, JMU was kind of like the group of 5 darlings, and Air Force rebounded really well. They pummeled them pretty good in the bowl game. And then this year they beat Merrimack at the FCS, but they've really, in regular season competition, they've not won an FBS game against FBS team, since last October. It's been a spell, man. It's been tough.
I'm not here to harp on Troy Calhoun, and I never really would harp on. I know it's still X's and O's, and they're playing a game. But what the airmen, the cadets, and the midshipmen do at these institutions and what they have signed up for and what they have sacrificed for, and Troy Calhoun went to Navy. I've never heard of the Denver Gazette. Might be new. I saw this Mark Kislaw. This is why I went into newspaper. I don't know how to pronounce stuff. It's a column from the Denver Gazette.
You're referencing. Yeah,
Gotcha.
It was not decorating Troy very, very.
No, the headline is, in his 18th football season at Air Force, has Troy Calhoun run out of magic? I think with what he's done there, and I know all good things must come Calhoun, but what are your thoughts on if you've read that article and what you see with that headline?
So first off, he's not wrong that this year's been disappointing and challenging, but I think the word disappointment has to be you have to put it in context. What did you expect from a team that just lost so much experience? They lost 7 deep on the offensive line. There's not a player on this team that started a game on the offensive line last year. There's not a player in the backfield that started a game last year. I mean, this team lost a ton of players, but staying power is important. So if you talk to most schools and their coaching staffs, or their fan base, of the coaching staffs, they'd be pretty happy with the tenure that Air Force has experienced under Troy Calhoun. So it's one of those things, again, it's like a victim of success thing again, where I think people got so used to winning, right? You can count on one hand in the last 5 full regular seasons the number of programs that have won more than Air Force. I'm not talking about teams in the Mountain West. Teams, like you're talking Nick Saban, Jim Harbaugh, and Ryan Day. There's a couple others, but I'm using a little hyperbole here. But there's nobody winning more football in that period of time than Troy Calhoun's team. Oh, you're right. All good things must come to an end. But this is a tough one. But it's how steep the decline was, right? It's different if you talk about linear progressions, right? If you're a school that's consistently struggling, you're battling to get to a bowl game here and there. You dip to a 3-win season. It's not great, but it's not always all that unexpected. When you're churning out 10, 11, 10, 11, 9 win seasons, it's a big deal. It's a lot of winning football, and you create some expectations. And by the way, to your point, expectations at a service academy. If people aren't familiar, these are not the same constraints. There's no NIL, right? I mean, there's no transfer portal. Only people leaving your team for the portal. You don't have the benefit of that. And look, I believe, Troy Calhoun will tell you, look, I think we benefit from that. We have continuity. We don't have to worry about requiring players. There's truth to that, but boy, when you lose every guy on the offensive line, it'd be kind of nice to dip into that recruiting pool, right? That is the transfer portal, and grab somebody that's gotten some game experience. So, and that's every academy. It's not just Air Force, right? It's Army. It's the military academy, Army and Navy. They all deal with that challenge.
I guess that was the Denver Gazette, which is a outlet of Colorado Springs. I'm so confused by everything merging. There are 3 quarterbacks listed as potential starters this week. That's usually, with the running game and the wing, the running game. I think it's a myth if you don't have one starting quarterback, you don't have a quarterback at all. If you've got 2, I think that's kind of a myth. Most people think that's true. I could be wrong. I didn't play the game. I just enjoy watching it and the history of it. That's, obviously probably the strength of your team, but when you can't find a quarterback and your season is going this south, what do you know about that position?
Look, first off, the guy that started every game this year, John Boucher, he started at prep. So he had experience in the system. Now he's a junior. He's getting his first year as a starter. He's gotten a lot of criticism. And you look at the stat lines, they're not favorable, but there's a lot of new pieces around him. And I'm not going to say that, the guys, performed stellar by any stretch. I don't know how successful anybody would be in that position, but you talk about the 3. First off, you can't give a ton of credence to a depth chart released by Troy Gunn. I wouldn't be surprised if John Boucher starts again, but I think there may be an inclination to give Quentin Hayes some run. He's got a little more juice running the ball. Definitely not as experienced. He's a sophomore, but I think that's where they're at. This season's it's very eerily similar to that 2013 season, right? They lost a lot of games that year. They went through a lot of quarterbacks. They started getting some youth, some experience. It might be that time, but I think it's a style of play. Hayes seems to be a little faster, but it's different when you are the presumptive starter, right? So I would expect you'll see both of them. I wouldn't necessarily go Josh Johnson. I know he's listed on there, but I don't think that's going to necessarily be the case. But I wouldn't be surprised to see either Boucher or Hayes. And I don't think all the problems are under center, but man, you've got to get more production from the quarterback position than what they've had right now. And in Air Force, right, it starts with that running game, and they've enjoyed one of the best offensive lines in the country year over year up until this season, and that plays a big part in a quarterback success, right? Having a good line is going to make a cover of a lot of sins, and they also have playmakers by that virtue surrounding their quarterbacks, whether it was your guy from your neck of the woods, right? Zeke Daniels from New Jersey. He had a great run for 3 years. Guy did nothing but win football games. Zach Layer was stellar last year until he got hurt. He played great once he returned. Before that, Donald Hammond III. You name it. They've gotten good quarterback play during this winning tenure. Right now is a little bit of a lull. I think that's probably a question mark. But yeah, it's a very fair question. You talk about listing 3 quarterbacks. It might be one of the situations where you don't have a defined starter, and it might be a little more indicting. Whereas I'm with you. I don't know that it's always that cut and dry that if you have more than one, you have none. But in this case, it's not an ideal circumstance to say the least.
And it's kind of crazy because Bryson Daly and Blake Horvath at Army and Navy have played maybe some of the best quarterbacking in the country, arguably. You mentioned in the text, which I follow a lot of college football, and I did watch, Navy and Air Force this week. And then I started to look at what Air Force has done offensively, and it's not, and you've kind of touched on it, it's not your traditional Troy Calhoun, the Air Force. 11.4 points a game, 57 total points, 7 total touchdowns. The rushing game isn't efficient. They've passed 26 times. They've completed 26 out of 64 passes for 380 yards. The inept of this offense, I know you kind of touched on it, but have you ever seen I know the answer. Have you ever seen an Air Force offense like that?
So since I was born, and I'm almost 43 years old, there has been one Air Force team to finish outside of the top 10 nationally in rushing at the end of a year once. And that was during that really difficult 2012 season. and they were 13th. Right now, they're just inside the top 60 in rushing offense. It is abysmal. It's tough. It's tough. There's not a lot to work with. If you look philosophically, I think that things have changed a little bit the way that Mike Thiessen's running their offense, and I think again he was tailoring that because there was a belief that John Boucher was going to be able to push the ball because they actually do have some skill at receiver. They recruited really well at receiver by academy standards, so they do have some talent there. But again, a lot of other things have to go. Air Force, it's not just a conventional passing game. And as I said, you mentioned Blake Horvath, right? Who that is the paradox to them right now. Drew Cronick, the offensive coordinator that Navy went out and picked up this year, with an offseason of work, and what he's done with Blake Horvath is just brilliant. I mean, they're throwing the ball, but they're playing this guy's skill sets, and this is I look at the Lobos, right? Devin Dampier. You look at he started last year as a freshman, right? Underclassman this year. You want to see that jump the next year once you get some experience. Well, Blake Horvath, he got run last year, but he was mired in a quarterback carousel with Ty Lavatai, who was a senior, started multiple times over 4 years with Navy. Xavier Arline, same thing. He was a lacrosse star. He got a lot of time at quarterback also. And Blake Horvath was the guy they thought, man, he was very athletic, very well thought of. So he kept pushing up depth chart, but like a young guy, a lot of times, he was loose to the ball a little bit. And now this year you could see it just clicked. And he has just been an absolute stud. Bryson Daly, the Army's quarterback, the guy has been in a consistent offense. They run then now you see year 2 where he's had it completely his offense engineered, and he's so comfortable in it. You need to see that in this type of offense, and they all have nuance. Don't get me wrong. Particularly, man, what Navy's running, really interesting. Just as a college football fan, you have to appreciate what they're doing, and the wrinkle that I believe he calls it like a spread wing tee. It's pretty fascinating what to see what they're doing, but that's what you hope to see at Air Force, because really Air Force was that team these past years doing that, and it's not. It all starts and stops with running the ball. And by the way, they can't stop the run either. That's not helping either. And those things feed each other at the academies, right? They churn clock. They're running. The proverbial 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So you minimize possessions. The offense grinds out the opposing defense because there's long drives. If you can't run the ball, the defense is just getting left on the field too long. By the way, it's a very inexperienced, very injury-laden defense. They're pressing 4 deep at linebacker. It's been tough. They're all difficult recipes. So the narrative is really, really flipped between the academies for this year. So, I mean, a lot of success where, Army, Navy took lumps the last few years, getting experience, and it's paying off. At Air Force this year, it's time to take your lumps. You've won 11, 10 games every year. There's going to be a drop off, but they're going to need to get these guys experience. You're going to hope that you see a rebound similar to what, again, a Blake Horvath, the development he's seen year over year under a really good coordinator. And by the way, Mike Thiessen's a fantastic coordinator. He's the most experienced coordinator in college football, most tenured at least. No one's been with the same program in the same position as long as he has. And if you look at the history, right, I just spewed it out. But in the last 5 years, I think 4 of the years Air Force has led the nation in rushing. The other times they're second. So it's not as if they got all of a sudden these guys forgot how to coach. I think that's ridiculous.
No, I would agree with that. I think you kind of answered my next question. Then I'll get into the Air Force and UNM matchup. And it's not a secret anymore. Navy is 5-0. Army is 5-0.
I hadn't heard.
Yeah. Hey, nobody knew. Probably because it's usually the opposite. They're probably a combined 0-10. And they haven't. The last time they were both combined 8-0, we had just defeated Hitler and the Japanese. So that goes to show how long ago it was, which I love that stat for somebody who wrote his thesis on the battle in the Pacific. If they truly are on a collision course and we sit here kind of gearing towards the middle of October and we are sitting here next month and they are 8-0, 9-0, how important, as you pay close attention to one of the academies, how important is it? And they can meet in the American title. They'll meet in their traditional game. Then they can meet in the American championship game, which I think is phenomenal. And then one of them might be playing for a college football playoff spot. How significant do you think that is just not for college football, but for, I think, maybe casual college football fan and the nation?
Yeah, so it's the opportunity is there. You look at the schedule; both their roads go through Notre Dame. They got to play the Irish. That's part of the most significant competition. It's a really weird dynamic too, right? So they're in a conference together now. They could conceivably play for conference title and then play again. But by the way, when the Army Navy game, America's game, is not a conference matchup. It does not count towards the conference record. It is a really, really fascinating dynamic that we're going to see play out. If they can stay healthy,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a really weird nuance to it. It's kind of like similar to some of these schools that just joined the Big 12, for instance, this year. Like they played because they agreed contractually to play before they joined the conference. Their game this year does not count as a conference record, which is just odd to me. So when Army and Navy play in America's game, it is not of conference relevance, right? They will have already decided the conference championship before that game is played. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamics. But to your point, if they say they run the table, is there a playoff spot at hand for that? I mean, that's a real conversation. They should be outside of their games against Notre Dame. Both schools should be favored the rest of the way. Now, look, Army's passed so far. I don't know what their marquee win is so far. Is it UAB? I don't know. But Navy, they beat up a pretty good Memphis team, a Memphis team that a lot of people thought was going to be vying for that Group of 5 playoff spot. So we'll see. I mean, that game's going to be of great significance. And I always found this fascinating. Like last year, Air Force was a prohibitive favorite over Army when they just came in and punched them in the mouth. But I think there's an element to, like, I used to believe that Jeff Monken was so obsessed with winning the Commander-in-Chief's trophy that they would sacrifice losses through, at that time, being an independent school, in those games to secure an opportunity for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. And it's not they weren't winning a lot of games, right? They got bowl games here and there, but it's paid off, right? Like Army, they've been playing for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy since its inception, right? And they've only won it 10 times, but over the last, 5 of them have come in the last 7 years. He's done a phenomenal job with that program. So I think what's changed though is I could be wrong on that hyper focus, but it's translated to the rest of the schedule. And again, it doesn't hurt. Look at the rest of their schedule. Again, I believe they're favored. And I think if you look at the strength of schedule, if you buy into any of that, both Army and Navy have, I think, 2 of the 5 softest, literally by statistics, schedules as that ranking goes. So, but you can only play who's on your schedule, right? So it's a very real conversation at the end of the year that we could be looking at.
I am in New Jersey the week of Saturday, November 23rd, when Army plays Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium, and Notre Dame plays Navy on October 26th in East Rutherford, New Jersey at MetLife Stadium. I did not know that. That really strikes a chord with me. I'm excited for these 2 programs. So
it's good for football. It's good. It is good for college football. I
appreciate you dissecting that. Our house that is UNM. You mentioned Devin Dampier. What has impressed you about UNM thus far?
Listen, again, as a dual threat, like you see the development for like that guy gives me anxiety. I'll be honest with you, as an Air Force fan and a defensive fan, their quarterback, that kind of play gives you anxiety. Anytime someone's a dual threat, but seeing a guy who's clearly developing too. Like I know that some of the turnovers are there, but I think there's something to be said too for like when you have a young talented guy, and I'm focused on him, but you have arguably one of the best receivers in the conference in Wysong, right? So like it's not as if there's no other pieces there that kind of have kind of reared in the past, but now you have a mature, experienced, winning coach. Bronco Mendenhall is he's a winner. The guy's dominated Air Force in his time. I think he's 5-1 against Air Force, which you look at the history. Air Force is I think they're 24-11, 24-10, something like that against New Mexico, not against Bronco Mendenhall. And it's similar, right? Rocky Long was a guy who, no matter where he went, gave Air Force trouble. And even the schools when he coached at did not have winning records, but they did against Air Force. Now, look, Some of that maybe not as a DC for the Lobos and that short stint, but overall, I think that you can't overlook that either. I think there's probably more athletes than you realize, as at least if you're an Air Force fan, if you're not familiar with New Mexico, you're probably going to see a level of athleticism that you aren't used to. And again, I know the Montana, the early FCS loss is on there and people might look at that, but that's a really good FCS school. And if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of parity between the top echelon of FCS schools come in and knock off a lot of FBS schools now. So this is not one. I mean, New Mexico's favored in this game by almost a tud. I think the line I thought was like 6.5, something like that. So it's gonna be interesting. But to answer your question, the quarterback's ability to make ad hoc plays, that's the one that terrifies me. And the Air Force's most disruptive player is not going to be playing in this game. Peyton Zadroik is injured, so he's not going to be playing. They had 2 defensive players coming back this year that were previous all-conference players. One was Zadroik, who's one of the best interior linemen in the conference. He won't be in this game. And then you're 4 deep at linebacker. Not a great recipe for the guy you're hoping to spy, one of the most athletic people in the conference. And at safety, again, we're riddled with injuries back there. Camby Goff was previously an all-conference player, lost the entire year last year to injury. Hasn't quite gotten the form yet. So again, it's just between the injuries, the inexperience, the stuff that you see Dampier do and what your offense is capable of. I mean, you're out rushing Air Force, by the way, right? You're averaging 200 on the ground, which is more than Air Force. You have multiple players with 200 yards on the season. Air Force doesn't have a single player that's rushed for 200 yards this year. Go ahead and puke, Ryan. Like, that's not supposed to happen. That's not how the academies operate. So
No,
there's a lot of things to be concerned about. So one of the closing remarks from Dr. Barnes was, hey, I'm actually optimistic about this Lobos team. I think you should be. And I think starting with this week, obviously, I think you have reason for optimism there.
He is Sean O'Toole of Mountain West Wire. Sean, I always appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest. I'll bug you at some point again, probably towards the end of the season, especially with the other academies doing well. I know you focus on Air Force, but definitely Army, Navy, especially if they are, I don't know, combined like, I don't know, 16-1 or something. At that point, I'll definitely have you on. And you know what I forgot to do every time I talk Air Force? I forgot to cue it up.
Give me the logins.
There it is. Hey, Slider, you stink. His name is Sean O'Toole from Mountain West Wire. Sean, thanks for joining us tonight. When we come back, Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News, and then, oh my God, Mr. Ben Wysong. Sorry, logins got into my head. So this is the Pit Press Live. My name is Ryan Tamori.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Okay, perfect. Everybody can hear me. Sorry, I got kicked off. It's been one of those nights and one of those days. Thank you to Sean O'Toole. Really appreciate his time. He is very, as I just told him, you would think he actually covers Air Force Academy football the way he talks about it. Really appreciate him. It was really insightful. I'm excited for Army and Navy. You have no idea. I'm going to go to the comments real quick before we get Nick Coppola in here. Timothy Blisky's tuned in here for Mia. The Bic. Those are got to be for Sean. I don't know what that mean. I apologize. John Romero. New Mexico State East got the attention of the nation. First off, I don't think Vanderbilt's academics hold up to NMSU's, but to each their own. Jerry Kill's fingerprints influence the game plan. 40 minutes of offensive possession. Good for Vanderbilt. Nice when the Giant is slayed. I was on here, and we've mentioned that Diego Pavia is a gamer. And one of the things that I don't want to do, other than we're talking our betting segment, is try to end up on freezing cold takes or, I don't know, just getting called out. We've mentioned it. Diego Pavia is a gamer. My whole issue that I have beaten like a dead horse is the hypocrisy of the thank you, God, God is good. And then he gets on the post-game interview and curses. And as I've said a million times on here, what would Jesus do? I'm sure he'd break into your neighbor's house and piss on his lawn. That's my issue. And the no apology by NMSU. But then I have to backtrack for all you usual suspects that listen. Jerry Kill and New Mexico State were a covering machine for me last year, and they've kind of turned into a covering machine for me again this year, betting against them. John, we do appreciate listening. I appreciate you listening. Thank you. Thank you for being very supportive of us. Much appreciated. Again, I know I'm a UNM alumni, but I've had my qualms. If you've listened to the show, my quarrels with UNM. My Mike Loxley run-in, which I haven't kind of gotten over. I don't talk about it much. I've mentioned it on the show. I enjoyed watching UNM lose. A certain few people in the media relations department, that's not here nor there. All right, our next guest as he joins us weekly, and it's a little bit of an oddity because Conference USA, we've got 55, 56 days straight of football. New Mexico State on CBS Sports Network, I believe. ESPN2, my goodness. They are at Jacksonville State in, I believe, Jacksonville, Alabama. His name is Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. Nick, I think I've got you on mute there. Hold on. I'm going to have to ask you to unmute. Sorry. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's been a busy day, busy night so far, but it's been a good day, so everything's going great.
I know it's been a little crazy down there. I don't know where we start. I don't know. How was the bye week for New Mexico State? Let's start there.
Seems to be good. We got to talk to them Monday since they canceled their presser last Monday. And so we didn't get this past Monday was the first time we got to talk to them since they played New Mexico. And they seem to have a pretty relaxed bye week. They seem to feel pretty good. They told us that they got to have some off days. They got to shorten up some practices. And so they feel pretty refreshed. They've had 11 days off, or they will have 11 days off heading into tomorrow. So yeah, I think they just took this time to kind of relax and heal up, try to get some guys back, try to get some guys healthy. Who knows if they'll have everyone ready tomorrow in terms of people getting healthy. But yeah, it seems like they just took the bye week to kind of, I guess, hit the reset button in a way.
It's probably good for them given, Fresno State and then UNM. I don't know how Bronco Mendenhall and that crew is reacting after coming off a win and going to the bye week. But my man Santino Mariucci is starting again. Are you shocked by that move, or has he given them at least some stability at the quarterback position? Again, he came from the ACC. He's been at that level, a higher level. Are you shocked by that or no?
No, I'm not. Because the game against New Mexico was the first time all season that a New Mexico State quarterback looked somewhat competent and then somewhat good. That was probably the best or that was, the best game that a New Mexico State quarterback has played all season. And I mean, Deuce Hogan's hurt for the season, so they can't go back to him. Parker Waugh just never really looked comfortable, never really looked confident in the offense, and really just might not be ready for a job like this at the Division I level. And so, Marioti's looked the best, and he looks the most comfortable. He looks the most ready, and so I'm not surprised at all that they went to him. And I feel like, barring him playing bad or him getting hurt or something like that, he'll be the quarterback for New Mexico State going forward.
Andrew Mitchell, the assistant head coach and run game coordinator, will be calling plays again. I'm gathering he's the one, and I was unaware of this. I didn't even think about it. So again, doing my due diligence on this show, I'm gathering he called the plays against UNM. Are you shocked by that? I don't know if it was more, and maybe I'll get your opinion. I don't know if it was more of NMSU's or UNM's defense or NMSU maybe figuring it out. Maybe it's a mix of both. I'm going to say it's probably UNM's defense not being good. I know they didn't win, and they didn't win a rivalry game, but they still have to be happy they at least to take something positive out of a negative. They put up 40 against UNM. So are you shocked that Andrew Mitchell is continuing to call plays?
No, I'm not. He did a good job, especially given the circumstances. He only had, he had less than 24 hours notice in calling plays. And so I think he did a great job, all things considered. I knew it was either going to be him or Cedric Cormier, who's the wide receivers coach and their passing game coordinator. Andrew Mitchell's their run game coordinator. So I knew it was going to be one of those two. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned that New Mexico State's defense hasn't really been that good this season, but New Mexico State's offense was in a similar situation, coming into Saturday. They were a bottom 10 offense in the country amongst FBS teams, and something had to give, and so it happened to be New Mexico State's offense that got the better of New Mexico's defense. They lost because the same thing happened for New Mexico State for New Mexico State's defense against New Mexico's offense. But yeah, they're really confident. That was the best game they played all season offensively for a season where they've really struggled to not just score but even get into the red zone. And so he did a great job. I think he called good plays. Tony Sanchez insists that it's a very collaborative effort between coaches, but he's the one calling the plays. Or Andrew Mitchell was the one calling the plays, and I'm not surprised that he did that. He really tailored a game plan for Mariucci well, who's been described maybe by teammates as a guy who's more willing to tuck and run and take off and scramble and things like that. But they've also mentioned that that's something they needed from the quarterback position, and that they thought they were going to get that from Parker Waugh, but that was his play on the ground and his rushing and his play through his legs just wasn't really as effective, or at least not what they would like. And so seems to fit Mariucci, seems to fit the offense. I think he's doing a great job, and who knows how he's going to do tomorrow. Jacksonville State's defense is in the bottom half of Conference USA, so maybe they'll have a better offensive game, or maybe they'll have a good offensive game again. But yeah, I think he more than proved himself against UNM.
Yeah, I know Jacksonville State is not very good defensively. The first game of the year, I know Coastal Carolina ran on them. They're 2-3. Kind of switching gears to their team. Tyler Huff is their quarterback. Of course, Rich Rodriguez is the head coach there, and they have shown sign. They ran over, who did they run over last weekend?
Kennesaw State.
Yeah, Kennesaw. That's right. Yeah, Kennesaw State is not very good. And yeah, it is Jacksonville, Alabama. Okay, thank God I got that right. Tyler Huff is put up some pretty good stats. They're okay. He's thrown for over 1,000 yards. He's got a 67% completion percentage, almost 9 yards a pass. He has thrown 4 interceptions to his 5 TDs. I don't like that. He does lead the conference in rushing. How do they stop him after, and I'm using your words, and they're probably because you picked them up for me, after they let Dampier take a big fat dump on the NMSU defense?
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking through Jacksonville State's team, Tyler kind of stood out to me, not because of his passing, but because of his rushing. Like you mentioned, that he leads Conference USA in rushing, not just amongst quarterbacks, everyone. He is Conference USA's leading rusher right now. And in the past 2 games against UNM and against Sam Houston, they've really had a hard time stopping rushing quarterbacks. Dampier was able to do whatever he wanted on the ground. He made some great throws after scrambling as well. Sam Houston had 2 quarterbacks that did pretty good job on the ground against New Mexico State. And so for a quarterback who leads the conference in rushing at this point in the season, it doesn't bode well for a team that hasn't really done well in stopping rushing quarterbacks recently. So I expect Tyler Huff to have a good game on the ground. They also have the conference leader in rushing touchdowns. I believe that's Trey Stewart. He's had a good season for them as well. And so, New Mexico State's run defense has really been a struggle this entire season as well. So, I think he's the guy that's going to have another good game. I think those 2 are really going to be X factors for the Gamecocks and going to be a thorn in New Mexico State's side of the entire game. They just have to improve up front. They just have to be a little more physical. They just have to win the line of scrimmage more. And they really haven't done that this season. And that's what's killed them. That's what's allowed them to be gashed on the ground. That's what's allowed them to, allow all the big quarterback plays that they've allowed this season. And, unless a big change happens, I would expect Jacksonville State and Tyler Huff and Trey Stewart to have better games there on the ground, or to have good games on the ground, I should say.
The game is tomorrow night on ESPN2. Conference USA has taken a playbook out of Maction, which I love. I enjoyed the FIU Liberty game this year. I don't think Liberty's as good as people think they are. They've kind of escaped by the hair of their chin. Jacksonville State is favored by 21 points. Are you shocked by that, Nick?
No, not really. New Mexico State has been a big underdog in most of their games this season. They were an underdog against UNM at home, and UNM was winless, and New Mexico State was the only one with a win. And so I think that kind of tells you possibly everything you need to know about them. I mean, the games are played on the field. I mean, of course, you don't play games off point spreads, but the fact that they are 20-point underdogs heading into a road game where Jacksonville State has a losing record right now, and yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised by it. It was a little bit like, oh my gosh, they're 21-point underdogs. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised with that. And I honestly don't think New Mexico State is going to win tomorrow night either. So I don't know if Jacksonville State's going to cover that spread, but I'm not going to pick the Aggies to win either.
Do you like the fact that Conference USA plays these games on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights? I know they're going up against playoff baseball. Baseball and college football are my bread and butter. It's 1A, 1B. And it doesn't help that I'm a Mets fan, which I didn't think that I would be watching them right here, right now. But that's not here nor there. I'm getting off topic, Ronnie Chavez. Do you like the idea of these Conference USA games where FIU and Liberty tonight in a really good game was, standalone national attention? It was on CBS Sports. NMSU getting their brand out, Jacksonville State getting their brand out again tomorrow night, the word I hate, but on ESPN2. What do you make of Conference USA doing this?
Selfishly, I wish all the games were on Saturday just because it's easier for me to do all the work Monday through Friday and do all my writing and things like that, and then just focus everything on a Saturday for game day. But I totally understand it from Conference USA's standpoint. I mean, they're one of the, low-profile conferences in college football, even amongst the group of 5. Not many people think about Conference USA. When you think about the group of 5, you think about the American or the Mountain West or other conferences other than Conference USA. So, I totally get it because they're not really nationally televised on Saturdays. So, for them to get games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, that's probably the only time they're going to get exposure for most of the season and get on national television, take advantage of the TV deals they have rather than just being on ESPN Plus every week. And so I totally get it from their standpoint. I imagine it's good for players and coaches as well because they get to try and showcase themselves and they get to showcase their brand and their program for potential recruits and just for college football fans in general who otherwise may have not had a chance to watch them. So I totally get it from a Conference USA standpoint. And yeah, I mean, it's just like the MAC too, the MAC, that's probably the only chance they're going to get on national television too, so they play on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so, yeah, I imagine it works out well for Conference USA, and I imagine their teams are happy with it as well.
It's Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. I'm gathering there is my final question to you. I'm gathering there is no update on the Tyler Wright situation. They are just staying mum, and it is what it is.
Nope, no update yet.
Appreciate that. Hey, Nick, always a pleasure talking to you. We will bug you next week. I believe that New Mexico State plays. Let me go to the trust.
They play next Tuesday. Yeah,
they play next Tuesday. I'll be on an airplane, so we'll figure out how to. Maybe I'll bug you Saturday morning to come on the show as we look ahead to it. You know, man, I always appreciate your time. You're doing good work down there. You enjoy the game tomorrow night. Have a good rest of the week, and I guess you might have some time off to watch a full slate of college football on Saturday. So enjoy that. Thanks for your time, man. Have a good rest of your week.
Of course, yeah, you as well.
Appreciate. Whoops, I took myself off the stage. That is Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News. When we return, resident linebacker, Mr. Ben Wysong, he will join us and talk many things Mountain West, and then he's going to Ohio State, Oregon, which I'm very, very jealous about. My name is Ryan Tamori. This is the Pit Press Live.
Our head coach of our local football program, Bronco Mendenhall.
Details themselves with the right preparation can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.
All right, let's make sure I'm didn't exit myself from the streaming service that we use. That was fantastic. Hey, my name is Ryan Tamori. It's hard to produce and host the show at the same time. And yes, David Fresquez, it is past my bedtime. I'm tired. I do a lot. I still love hosting the show. Whoops. Jimmy H. Ben should perform a permanent part of the cast. I love it when he's on. He essentially is. I know you're very fond of me, Jimmy. A little back and forth going on between Jimmy H and John Romero. Kill and Pavia go together. Yeah, where was Kill? Where did it go? Where did Kill and Pavia go together like piss and vinegar. John Romero, Jimmy H. That piss and vinegar mixes into an intoxicating sweet drink of victory. Look, when I was a fall down drunk, I drank Fireball and Bud Light. I still wouldn't have probably drinking piss and vinegar. Kill is a psycho winner scoreboard. David Fresquez, love me. Pip Press. And yeah, it's past my bedtime. I'm up pretty early on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I usually start my day around 7. But because I've become an old man, I wake up earlier now for whatever reason. Maybe try to get through the segment if that baseball game is still on. And as I've mentioned, I'm struggling with the idea of a Padres and Mets National League Championship Series, but that's not here nor there. We go now to our resident linebacker. He is a former Lobo defensive player for the University. Well, Lobo. A lot of redundancy tonight, like we called Mr. Dr. John Barnes. It's Ben Wysong, as he always does, joining the show this week for his insight. And I'm probably going to bug him Saturday, because he's going to Ohio State and Oregon in Oregon. How amped are you for this game?
Man, I'm excited. I mean, I think it was just one thing, the fact that you got the number 2 and number 3 going, match up against each other. But now you got game day being there. And I mean, that place is just going to be a madhouse, and just seeing all the fans on Twitter just posting, like how loud it's going to be. And, I mean, it's the zoo, man. I mean, how can you not want to go see a game there? So it's going to be exciting.
Well, here's the thing is I didn't do my due justice on Sunday because I was up at the ass crack of dawn to watch whatever that NFL game was. I did not realize they were number 1 and number 3 in the AP poll. And I usually see on game day on Instagram where they're going to be.
Right.
And Oregon will bring it. So it'll be like the same thing at Berkeley, but Berkeley was different because that was the first time there. But that Oregon crowd's got to be great. Once again, this is a Rose Bowl matchup that we're playing in expletive October. So it is what it is. But
Right.
I don't know. I will still watch. I still love it all. I will still, hey, I've been winning some money on college football this year, so I'm happy. Not flushing the $100 down the toilet like I always do. I can just go to the ATM and just flush it down the toilet. UNM didn't play, so we'll switch gears there. UNM didn't play. Air Force did. They got their behinds kicked by Navy. Before we start there, I wanted to get a recap of some of the Mountain West action this weekend. What did you see out of Air Force? Because they did not look so hot.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a different Air Force team that, we're used to seeing. I think Sean nailed it on the head earlier. Just talking about, just teams of the past, you're used to these 9, 10, 11 win seasons, that Coach Calhoun and, that their company produces. But yeah, when you're having to, replace, what was it, like 18 starters, I think. And, like Sean said, you got 30 guys that are playing, starting for the first time. That's pretty detrimental to a team. And, but then again, too, hey, with this year maybe being a down year for these guys, maybe this could be good for them, next year and the year after that. So, and they've done that before. So I remember, with Sean, when he referenced that 2012 team, that's exactly what happened. And then next thing you know, these guys are going to bowl games again, and they're contending for a conference championship. So, but yeah, definitely different. It was a different team that I'm used to seeing. So, yeah, the running production, I'm used to seeing like 300 yards a game from these guys. And, it just did not look the same.
This has to be good news for the UNM defense, which again, I don't mean to harp on. You and I have become pretty friendly as you've joined us here. And I'm a defensive guy. But the Air Force quarterbacks combined for 115 yards on 5 of 9 passing, and the only score was a touchdown. If you are seeing those stats as a defensive mindset, and putting yourself maybe in the shoes of some of these guys on the UNM defense, you have to be like, maybe number 1, thank God, and number 2, like, hey, let's show people what we can do. And I don't think it's a detriment to the total yards. I know I've been hard on them because that's where I haven't seen improvement. And I'm quoting Ned James again here, is offense puts butts in the stands, defense wins games, and special teams wins championships.
Right.
You see that, and you've got a little bit of rest in you. You have to be pretty amped up, and this game's at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the big factor with it being a home game, for one. And, these guys are probably wanting to play football again. Especially, coming off a bye week where you've had the opportunity to get some rest and, get some of these injuries healed up that, maybe they've been hindering them for a while. And, especially when you hear the number thrown around between, 6 to 7 guys coming back. That's a pretty big difference. So, especially with, we talked last time with Tavian possibly coming back, that's going to be a huge bump to that defense. He's a proven leader. And yeah, at this point, when you got, more tools in your tool belt, hey, it opens up the book to, maybe, put more pressure on these quarterbacks, especially, like Sean was saying earlier again, it's, they're starting to throw the ball a little bit more and, compared to like, say, Army and Navy. So, but yeah, looking at the stats, when you've got, Busha, he's completing, 35% of his passes, so it's like, hey, are we just going to send the house on this guy and just, try to create chaos? Or, are we, the big thing, with Air Force that, I remember always looking back with Coach Long is that, you got to maintain gap integrity with these guys 100%, especially that B gap. I heard Coach Mendenhall talk about it earlier with that, with his press conference, and it's the real deal. So it's fundamental football.
Do you think, and I think a lot of thinking going on here, if they can play defense well, it can give them confidence.
Yeah.
And then their schedule isn't as tough as people realize, again, I've got that Washington State game circled because they just seem to move the ball at will. But again, the schedule is pretty favorable. If they have one game where they play phenomenal defense, can that change the tone of the season for this team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just builds confidence within that locker room and, within the program in general, especially when you're going up against an offense like Air Force. I mean, yes, they are, 1-4, but still, I mean, that's still a pretty decent team because, especially with football this day and age, that's probably the only time you're going to see the triple option is playing these guys. You've got other conferences like, I mean, look at the Power Four. I mean, you don't see the triple option ran hardly at all. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. So it's going to be a big confidence booster for sure. And then especially like you just mentioned with the schedule, I mean, hey, we avoid Boise, we avoid UNLV, and so it's going to be a big deal for these guys, and, especially with them, with the injury aspect of it, with these guys getting healthy, and it helps a lot. It definitely helps the mentality of the game for these guys.
You mentioned UNLV and Boise, and I'll get to that in a second because that game Friday night I thought was phenomenal. Unless you had money on UNLV, have you talked to Luke or Evan, and what's the mood around the team?
Just sparingly, but they're chomping at the bit. They're ready for the next game. These guys, they love being on the field. They love being there on Saturdays, and they loved just having that opportunity to just step on the field and just try to put on a good product on the field. Especially from Luke and Evan's standpoint, we know with the offense, the way they're playing right now, these guys are playing some very good football on that side of the ball. So, yeah, and, with Dr. Barnes, I thought he said it perfectly. They definitely passed the eye test right now for sure on that side of the ball. But, yeah, the mood is great. It's a great opportunity for these guys to, come out there and get a win and move on to the next one.
Well, look who joined us, Mr. Richard Thompson, a two-time.
Oh, gentlemen. I couldn't let our loyal listeners down. I know they wanted to hear my monotone voice to put them to bed this evening, and here's some knowledge. So thank you for allowing me to join.
Well,
and I've been listening, but I've been laying down on a twin bed with my daughter listening to you guys preach the good word here. So good job, guys.
Awesome.
I'm going to go here. How's Dawn's ass crack these days? Ass crack of Dawn. All right. I wish I had Beavis and Butthead queued up.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Feeding off your. Or go ahead, Ryan.
I do have that. I do have the sound effects that I try to use sparingly because I listen to too much Jim Rome. Go ahead, Rick.
No, just feeding off the triple option conversation, and they were saying, or Coach Mendenhall was saying on one of the talk shows that every play is really designed to score a touchdown if it's designed correctly. And I guess the thing I worry about with the Lobos is they've seen to wear down at the end of games. And is there anything that you think they can do to prepare, other than just maybe, I guess, really run a lot this week or something to prepare physically to have that endurance for the long-term game? Is there anything they can do? Because we know they're going to know their assignments. Coach Mendenhall is going to drill that. They've had 2 weeks to prepare. So they're going to be, knowing where they're supposed to be and a little healthier. But is there anything you can do to, endure a full game like that?
Sure, absolutely. I think a lot of it has to do with watching the film and looking to see, what kind of tempo are these guys running, just to be able to adjust to that tempo. You're looking for, for me specifically, I like to see how often they sub, their skill guys out, in terms of, hey, if you're burning your guys out, how can we then implement a rotation on the defensive side of the ball too, especially with the front seven. So considering how much those guys like to run the ball, that's going to be a big factor. I remember back, again, referencing Coach Long, we would rotate every 3 plays just to make sure that we were fresh in terms of just keeping up with those guys. But, the big factor coming into this game is just, having these guys back from injury, I think is going to be key. And hopefully it just builds these guys' confidence that, you are finally now playing, your 11 guys that, maybe, from a coaching staff standpoint, they initially planned on playing as starters. So, that way they can get that cohesiveness with that unit. And then especially with the bye week too, that's also another great opportunity from not only just from a film and repetition standpoint, but just getting some conditioning in, just to be able to get these guys, in shape. We always called it season shape, but it's definitely a thing. I will tell you that. I mean, having a week off, if you don't plan it accordingly or correctly, which I'm sure Coach Mendenhall has done a phenomenal job with all that. I mean, it's Coach Mendenhall. I think these guys have probably done a really good job as far as prepping these guys for this game. They're going to be ready. I think it's just going to come down to the execution aspect of it.
Yeah, I would agree. And one thing I wanted to mention to you guys, I don't know if you guys have been playing NCAA football. I know we're big with the Gen Z young people. The NCAA football rosters were updated. So Donovan is now actually D4. Medford and some of the other guys have their updated numbers, and I think some of the abilities, and Brody has been added to the roster and some of the other freshmen. So they updated the Lobos roster, and it's looking good.
That's awesome.
Well,
Tamari, I know you've
tonight.
seen it.
I know I haven't. I didn't see it today. What I did on the game is I sped through, like when you select in Dynasty, I sped through all the I pushed down the arrows and it ran through all the teams and I landed on UTEP. So I'm trying to turn around UTEP and I'm here too, and I think I'm in the Conference USA title game. Yeah, I know.
At least their stadium's cool.
I mean, I'll take another job elsewhere here at the end of the year. I've got a winning record, so I don't know. I'll keep you guys informed on my offers. I mean, we'll see what big school is open to looking at me and what I can turn around. Hey guys, if you have any time to do do you have any quick men's hoops recruiting update? Thanks. Let me get to, I don't really like to, I don't know why I do that. I don't like to do that when we have guests on. We'll get to that. We will be at fabulous Resorts World in beautiful Las Vegas. Excuse me. We'll be at beautiful Resorts World in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada next week. Rick and I will be there along with Jacob Neff, hoping to talk to all your favorite former UNM coaches like Steve Alford. And then we'll talk to Richard Pitino. Ben, and I'll get on Rick's. I'll ask Rick about this. I'll start with Ashton Genty because his numbers are like playing the video game that I play on this TV behind me. His numbers, he's got, 13. It was 13 touchdowns. Jacob and I were talking like you have to take his over rushing. At one point in that game on Saturday against Utah State, he had 6 carries for 160 some yards and already 2 touchdowns. When's the last time, Ben, when's the last time you saw a running back in this league like that? For me, I'm trying to think about it. I mean, Dontrell's got to come up, but Ashton Genty's on a whole other level.
Yeah, Dontrell's the only one I could think of. I mean, maybe that's just because I was around him every day, but at the running back position, for me, you would have to go all the way back to LaDainian, as far as someone that's just, that caliber the guy is literally averaging a first down a carry, which is absolutely absurd, considering the amount of carries that he's had already. You got to give him credit. I mean, the guy is very deserving of a Heisman. I mean, that guy he's going to be making a lot of money on Sundays.
Well, it's going to be awfully hard for him, though, to win the Heisman if his stupid coach keeps pulling him out of the game at halftime. If he could have had 500 yards rushing, maybe in that game. We're talking about one of the greatest backs. I know they're going to be drilling people, especially in conference here. But they got to allow him to at least play 3 quarters because what that could do for their team and university. And I'm sure he doesn't want to sit out. Well, he commented saying, he likes seeing the bench players get time, and I understand that.
Yeah.
You got to go big sometimes, and I'd like to see him play a full game to see what he can do. So hopefully they have some close games as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that, because even just looking at the schedule for this Saturday, these guys are at Hawaii, so you got to wonder now, is this guy going to play past halftime? I mean, not to discredit Hawaii in the least bit, but I mean, facts are facts. So it makes you wonder if this guy's already at 200 yards at halftime. Are they going to shut him down? I would imagine they probably are. The only thing for me that I could see where he would have a decent, and I kind of use that word loosely, a decent chance of the Heisman is if I think the UNLV game is going to be the big one coming up here in a couple weeks, and then I think if they win a Mountain West championship and get to the playoff, I think those will be the two things that'll help his chances. But me personally, I don't think if he doesn't get one of those two, I think he's done. I hate to say it. I mean, this is the world that we live in now, unfortunately. And I mean, even looking back at the history, I mean, I couldn't even tell you the last time a running back won the Heisman. It's all been quarterbacks.
I think it's been Derrick Henry.
Was it Derrick Henry? And gosh, I feel like Derrick's already been in the league now for ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
no,
it's ran by quarterbacks.
He has on the season 95 carries for 1,031 yards. He averages almost 11 yards a carry, 10.9 yards. His longest is 77, which I feel like he's had like a 90-yarder. I guess not. So that should put a damper on his Heisman status. 16 touchdowns. As I'm getting older, I'm spitting as I'm talking. To put this into perspective, Maddox Madsen has thrown for 1,056 yards and 10 touchdowns. And Ashton Genty has run for 1,031 yards. That baffles.
Wild.
It's wild.
And we're 7 weeks into this.
I know. Yeah. And then they take him out at half. I wonder what his running prop bet is probably going to be like 190 this week. It's going to be like 180.
Yeah.
Again, they play. Saturday night, and then I got to wake up and watch Bears Jags in London. Get a bottle of water. And it's in that game's at 9:00 Mountain Time on Saturday. Thank God.
Man, you're gonna have a rough day, dude.
I did it this past. I watched that Arizona game till 1:00.
Yeah.
And Rick and I, one of our friends and I watched the Jets, is a Vikings fan, and he was making pancakes at my buddy. It sounds stupid. He was making pancakes at my buddy's house because the Vikings fans. So like 6 people were over there, and we were in pancakes and having breakfast. They were having mimosas, and we were watching the Vikings Jets game, and I was up at 7:00. So I guess we'll do it all again this weekend because that's what I live for. Again, that UNLV game is Friday, October 25th on CBS Sports Network. Kickoffs at 8:30. Speaking of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, it was a phenomenal game on Friday night. They played Syracuse and Kyle McCord, some of you're very familiar with, Ben. He was 40 of 63 for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. That was a great play by my man crush Jackson Woodard. They had them dead to rights nearly at the end there. I will start with this question, being that you are the defensive guy. When you're on the field as much as they were, it was like 90 some plays, and then the game went to overtime, and you're at that altitude. I don't care that they play there, but how gassed would you have to be as a defensive guy?
Yeah, you are definitely going to feel it, especially anything, for us, anything 90 plays. I mean, I don't remember the game, but I remember there was a game that we had like 120, and, Coach Long bringing that up, like, I think it's going to come down to where you're going to see just how good the depth of your team is, because if you're not rotating those guys out, it's going to catch up to you, and it's going to catch up to you real quick. I mean, hey, especially with the way that overtime is with college football, I mean, yeah, you're starting at the 25, but hey, if you got, you're getting a third down every time, I mean, that's plays that add up real quick. And, if you're going against a team that runs tempo, good luck. So you'll feel it for sure. I don't think it really matters, the altitude, in my opinion. I mean, I remember playing down at San Diego State, and, with that humidity, I mean, I was gassed. I mean, I remember rolling down a kickoff. I'm like, holy crap. Like, this is awful. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that we were texting during that game. I had money on it, but I didn't get totally murdered. It was a fun game to watch. I mean, like I said, Kyle McCord threw 63 times. Malik Williams was 21 of 25, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception. Jet Thomas, I mean, I love this UNLV team. And then Malik Williams ran 12 times for 53 yards and a touchdown. Do you think this UNLV team is dead in the water? I mean, that could motivate them more. That was a tough way to lose, and they had 30-some thousand people in that stadium. So that's, again, program building moment. I'm not sure. I know they wanted to get out of there with a win. But what can you take away from UNLV? And their season isn't over.
Yeah, I think they're definitely in contention for a conference championship. I mean, especially with the skill guys that they have and the way that, that Malik's been playing. I think, that I'm not a big fan of moral victories, but I think you definitely got to take away something, though, for being able to hang with a team like Syracuse, because that's a good team as well. I won't be surprised if they make some noise in the ACC this year, especially with Kyle McCord. I mean, that guy's a proven winner. I mean, he was literally an interception away from, going to a college football playoff, with a good program at Ohio State. So I think, UNLV, I'm sure they know that. I'm sure it's still got to give them some confidence and, probably got a lot of, lit a fire into them. I remember seeing Jackson Woodard at the end of the game. That guy looked pissed, and it's like, hey, a guy like him, he's going to, with the leader that he is, he's going to motivate those guys and get those guys ready to go for the next game. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that UNLV Boise game. I think that's going to be a critical game and have a lot on the line for different reasons and different athletes.
Good, Rick.
I just wanted to mention I will be watching UNLV play in Honolulu when November 8th, I believe it is. I will be there for my birthday. My wife just doesn't know we're going to the game yet on my birthday. So I will be there covering it for all you guys and for Pit Press. I'll see what I can do there as far as I'm going to reach out and see if they'll let me in tomorrow. And we'll see what we can cover while I'm there, but I'll give some live reaction, even though I'll be 4 hours behind you guys. I think it's a 4 p.m. game there, which will be 8 p.m. for you all.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to being out there and experience. And they're playing in a smaller stadium right now because they're having their big one worked on. That'll take a few years. It's called TC Ching Stadium. It looks pretty cool. They've actually added some to it this year. So it's more of like a big high school atmosphere. So it should be fun.
Yeah, that'll be a good time.
Rick, I like your shirt, Torrey Pines. Yeah, we'll see what we can do because I know Jacob and I will be up watching that game, losing money on it. I'm trying to think anything else football wise that we can talk about. Was there anything else college football wise over the weekend that you saw that stuck out to you? Oh no, I know what I was going to ask. Diego Pavia and your thoughts on them beating Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to him. And I mean, hey, what can you say? The guy's a winner. That guy plays with a chip on his shoulder. I mean, we've known that since his high school days here. And, hats off to him. I mean, I'm happy for those guys, that they were, your typical David versus Goliath matchup. And, hey, Diego, hey, that team goes as he goes. I mean, when he's on, he's on. And great game. So I'm happy for those guys. I mean, yes, I'm a UNM guy, but hey, I'm always going to cheer for my New Mexico guys. So I'm really proud of him and what he did.
Was there anything else in college football that kind of struck your chord and maybe that's impressed you or you're not so impressed?
I think for me, I was actually a little surprised that Washington beat Michigan. I mean, I know Michigan isn't the Michigan of last year, but I was a little surprised by that. And I don't want to see David Fresquez comment that anymore on the Go Blue. So just kidding, David. But I was a little surprised by that game actually, considering this whole, Big Ten versus old Pac-12, with these matchups. So that's why I'm actually a little curious to see how this game goes this week with Ohio State and Oregon. I mean, you got, Ohio State playing lights out on offense, and actually in all phases of the ball, really. So, but with that environment, it's going to be interesting. So to see, how Ohio State handles, their first pretty much big test this year. But yeah, the Michigan-Washington game was kind of surprising to me.
I thought that was pretty rough for Washington to go there. Go ahead, Rick.
Now, one other thing I wanted to call out, because I think Ben knows this young man is the quarterback, Aiden Armenta from Albuquerque as well, started his first game at UL Monroe down there playing for Brian Vincent, who has now led the Warhawks to a 4-1 record coming from New Mexico as the offensive coordinator there.
Yeah.
So he's doing a great job instilling culture there. I think they brought in over 70 players. So their situation is much like New Mexico as far as what they brought in. He talked to Aiden early in the transfer process, and he decided to come over also. So 1 touchdown and 1 interception for him as they beat James Madison, who I believe was undefeated up until then. So, they're bowl hunting right now. And if you look at their recent history, even their overall history, I think they've only been to one bowl game. So what they're doing right now, led by two former Lobos, is pretty cool. And you got to give those guys a lot of credit for what they're building there.
Yeah, no doubt. I can't believe I forgot about that game. I'm so proud of Aiden because, we got to know him really well, especially with, him and Evan. They were in the same class, but, very happy for him and his family, and even, Coach Vincent and those guys too. I know Luke and Evan really enjoyed playing for him, and, I think it was also Brady. They had a really good bond, but yeah, that was a big win for them, especially James Madison. Those guys are no joke. I think Sean even talked about it earlier, whenever Air Force played them last year, they were kind of like the little Cinderella team. But yeah, I mean, how can you not root for those guys? I mean, you got a couple guys, on that roster that have New Mexico ties. So it's cool to see those guys doing their thing down there. And I think they can make a bowl this year. And it's going to be fun to watch Aiden, develop, as, as he has been. So, I was actually a little bummed to see him leave. I will never forget that state championship game when him and Evan and those guys just battled it back and forth. And, Aiden is, I would say, probably a very underrated quarterback, and that kid could probably lead any team in my opinion. So I'm a big fan of him, and I'm really happy for those guys.
Yeah, and I heard him on the radio with Jeff and JJ, I think yesterday morning, and he was just saying he did hang around in that transfer window at UNM a little bit, but I think when you see Devin Dampier and your offensive coordinator who you came in under leaving,
sure,
the writing's kind of on the wall that there's probably a better opportunity for you. And I think he played a few times within the first few games at UL Monroe this year, and now he's really getting his shot. So great decision, to fly the coop out of Albuquerque and make the most of it so far.
Yeah, absolutely. No, very proud of him, and I hope those guys keep killing it down there.
We didn't even talk about their uniforms, because the Warhawk and the homage to the fighter squadron is pretty awesome. ULM has been in Division I since 2001, and they've only been to one bowl game in 2012, and they lost the Independence Bowl to Ohio, and they were in at the time, Division 1A playoff. 1, 2, 3. They actually won a national championship in 1987, and they defeated Marshall.
Oh,
so
wow.
they have a national championship at the FCS level.
Hey,
so that's pretty cool.
Ship.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that's I've kind of said that awesome for the last 10 years. I mean, if UNM had to drop down, which again, I don't think a lot of us want to see that. If you make a run in the FC, I mean, look what Montana, look at James Madison at their stadium. I know they made the jump. But what Montana State does, South Dakota State, I mean, some of those FCS schools, they're 30, 40,000 seats. I mean, Boise State's only like 37,000 people, and they pack it in. And when you're on the field there, it feels like a mini NFL. I mean, it's a college atmosphere, but it feels like a mini, I guess, college stadium, maybe like a mini SEC. I don't know. It's its own thing. But it felt like big time college football. Like it was great. Ben, do you have any final thoughts?
No, just looking forward to the weekend, for multiple reasons, just getting out to Eugene, just going to check out that game and just, check out that atmosphere. I'm excited for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think Oregon's doing a blackout this game. So I'm excited to see those uniforms and what they come out with. And, and then, for UNM standpoint, I'm excited to see these guys get another opportunity to get a W on that in the win column. So I think there's a great opportunity for these guys to come out and just really, showcase what their abilities are, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I'll be rooting for those guys from Oregon. So I'll try to somewhat have the video on, but I'm not making any guarantees. So it's going to be pretty wild up there.
Much like Auburn, we might bug you from Eugene, Oregon, if you're willing to come on.
Sure.
But Ben, as always, we appreciate your time with us this week. You're a part of this thing now. I know Jimmy was saying, one of our commenters was saying that, but Ben, no, we thank you. As always, joining us. We will take a quick break. I don't know if Rick's going to jump off. I want to talk about Ruben Douglas, Rick, if you wanted to join me after this.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Perfect. All right. Quick commercial break. Ben, as always, thank you very much. My name is Ryan Tamori. We'll be right back on the Pit Press Live. If I can find where to go to commercial.
Our head coach of our local football program, Bronco Mendenhall.
The details themselves with the right preparation can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.
Welcome back to the Pit Press Live. My name is Ryan Tamori. Much appreciation to Ben Weissong, Nick Coppola, and Dr. John Barnes. Love him, dealing with him in the press box. And then our friend Eric got his degree, master's in that program, and of course Bill Torres got his degree from that department. And I've only ever heard good things about Dr. Barnes, so that's awesome. Thoroughly enjoy Ben on here. Then I hear him rooting against Ohio State. And now he's legit. He's rooting for Ohio State. Sean, sorry about that. Quickly we'll talk about this for a little bit. And Rick has joined us for the remainder of the time we're on here.
Richard.
So feel free to chime in. Didn't have a question tonight because we were jam-packed with guests. UNM announced today.
I have the question if you need one.
Go right ahead. Just throw it out there.
What would Lobo Nation and the student population do if the Lobo football team won a game against a ranked team and it warranted tearing down the goalpost? I know they wrote they would take it to the duck pond, but do we really think the goalpost would go down if we beat a ranked team? That's my question.
I haven't thought about that because
is there enough students to take them down at the game?
Is there enough people in the crowd to do it that aren't AARP members? That's a good question. I'm going to answer no. And Ronnie Chavez, since 1999, when Ron Dane won the Heisman, only 4 non-QBs have won the Heisman: Bush 05, Ingram 09, Henry 2015, and Devonta Smith 2020. Yeah, that's right. The first one that popped in my head was Reggie Bush. Still think he was probably one of the most electrifying college football players of all time. Going to this, UNM announced their Hall of Honor induction class for this year. Pete Caballero, men's tennis. That is a phenomenal shirt. Kalen Downs, women's golf. Mike Solomon, men's track and field. And I think Mike and Jaron, I think this is his dad. I could be wrong. Jaron Solomon, men's track and field. And then you got rid of wrestling. And then lastly, I covered Jaron Solomon. He was a phenomenal indoor track. Ruben Douglas, and Rick, you sent the tweet out or a text out to us. I was shocked. You mentioned it, that Ruben Douglas is not in this and that it's post haste. I just wanted your thoughts on that, being the basketball guy, and we're both UNM alumni. I was kind of shocked.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked that he wasn't already part of the Ring of Honor based on the history he had and was the top leading scorer in the nation during, was it his final season?
Yeah,
on the Lobos.
2003, yeah.
Just an iconic player. You see him there with the big undershirt under his jersey. In high school, my whole team wore our shirts like that under our jersey because of him. Just an iconic player for us growing up, and really made his mark on the Lobos, even though he was on teams that weren't very successful. And, an unfortunate with his passing away, leaving, family. It's just too bad that he can't be around, for this special honor that he's receiving. But I think it seems like a few years overdue. But very, very great player, and very deserving of it.
2003 Mountain West Player of the Year, led NCAA in scoring during 2002-2003 season, 28 points a game. Honorable mention All-American. I don't know how you score 28 points a game and you're an honorable mention, probably because he was in the Mountain West. First team All Mountain West 2002-2003, and of course he was named to the Mountain West 25th anniversary team. We were efforting him when Ed and I were doing our Lobo Legends series, and you can go back and find that on Twitter and anywhere a podcast available. We had a lot of good people on. David Quixote,
Royce Only, Clayton Shields.
That's right. I'm trying to think who we had on. God, it feels like a century ago that we did that. It was only at the beginning of the year. We were efforting Ruben Douglas. Ed had kind of thrown that out to get him on, and I was really sad to hear about his passing. Andrew, and then oh goodness, I'm messing up the other gentleman that died.
Greg Brown.
Greg Brown. Yeah, I didn't want to. The name couldn't. I think about it. I wonder what. I think UNM said that they were going to honor them at basketball games this year. Obviously, they honored Drew, and Aaron was at the alumni game here. I hope that they do a little bit more. That would
his brother will also be changing his number this year to was it 32, which Drew wore, and other I think he said his sister has also worn. So that's really cool.
That's pretty cool. I'm gonna go to the comments here. Let's go Mets. I give up on my Dodgers. LOL. I pulled my hair out tonight. I mean that grand slam pulled it back of the game, but that's second or third inning by the Padres. Oh. Ruben was an amazing Lobo, one of the very best. I missed the series. Will you guys continuing? Yeah, we plan on doing it. We planned on that being like just solely recorded and on our site, which go visit it, the Pit Press NM, and of course on Twitter and all social media platforms. Rick, I think before we go, I wanted to get your thoughts maybe on Air Force and UNM and what you think can happen this weekend at University Stadium. And usually I'm on top of this. I didn't know why it took me until Tuesday night and Mr. Dr. Barnes to inform me that UNM, I think it's now a 6.5 point, and I might have opened at 4, but I wanted your thoughts on maybe how UNM can win this game, because I do think it's a very winnable game.
Sure. And then I can try to talk some basketball stuff if there's any lone soldiers and if you have any juice left in the tank. But for some football, Lobo's given up 250 yards rushing a game, one of the worst in the country, and we know that's all they're going to see against Air Force. So can they stop it somewhat? We know they're not going to stop it all the way. The thing in my eyes that is different about this Air Force team, and that's really keeping them under 10 points a game scoring this year, is they don't really have any long yardage plays. They used to get a fullback dive or something that would go 20 or 30 yards at least, and this year they're not getting that. So I think the spread is warranted. I expect UNM to put up a lot of points. Their offense has been looking pretty strong. Dampier even missed 1 or 2 touchdown throws last week in my eyes. So he's, putting up the best QB rating in the Mountain West. And as I said last week, I think he's clearly the best quarterback thus far in the conference. With that being said, Lobos are also rushing the ball at 200 yards a game. And last game, they were very successful with Rodgers. So it'll be interesting to see what mix of running backs the Lobos choose to use this week. Will it be Rodgers? Will it be Jacobs? or will we, just see Dampier taking off like we'd all like to see? So I expect the Lobos to come out on top, but I think it could be close because Air Force is just going to keep pounding. And in the end, we've seen the Lobos, especially against Montana State, in that fourth quarter is where they really lost their focus, right? And they just broke down, and Tommy Malott started to run wild. They gave up a 99-yard run in the second half of that game. So if the Lobos can limit those big plays, I expect them to win, but I think it'll be under 10 points. You thinking they're going to cover this week, Tamari?
I think if it was at 4, I was trying to look for the line there. I think if it was at 4, I'd have a different opinion. A full touchdown for a team that defensively hasn't looked good at all. I mean, that just blows my mind. I think, let me see if I can try to find it here. 130. UNM Air Force. I wanted to see the line movement. Holy moly. Okay. So it opened up at 2.5 and it's now at 6.5. So the Sharps have been betting it. And this is according to sportsline.com, part of the
I
CBS
thought it
Sports
opened at bigger. That's weird.
Yeah, no, it opened at 2.5, and that's according to Caesar Sportsbook. That's what they use. That's going to be a question for Jacob. He would know better than I. So somebody knows something that I don't know. If you want to win $100 on UNM money line, it opened up at -162, and it's now 242. The over and under would stay the same at 53.5, 54. That seems about right. I would take the over in that game immediately. Just given everything I've seen. At 2.5, I would probably take it. Just based off what I've seen from both schools. 6.5 is a lot. I can't believe it jumped that high. That that is insane to me. Hold on. UNM, and then we'll get to basketball here. Open at 2.5. Now, see if I can get a response from Jacob. Anyway, texting him now. Let's see, move comments. Air Force is 10-1 when scoring over 40 points in the series. Appreciate that.
Bronco Mendenhall is 5-1 against Air Force as well.
Ben mentioned that. That's very interesting. I love Troy Calhoun and what he's done at Air Force. Gonna go back to Z Mountain Shadow. Or ZMTN Shadow. I think I'm going to gather this mountain. Hey guys, if you have any time, can you do a quick men's hoop recruiting update? I'm going to throw it to Rick if you know anything, because you do pay attention to it during the day. I don't.
I'm going to try to present here and see if it works. We did recently miss out on someone. Let me see if I can do this here.
If you need me to present it, just there we go.
So the two signings that we have thus far are Jalen Petty, point guard out of Auburn, Washington. He is more of a scoring guard. He went on the Adidas circuit, according to Kevin Sweeney on Sports Illustrated, who's come on the show and really lit it up this year. And I did watch the film on him. He can shoot the basketball from mid-range and from 3, also effective driving, very athletic young man. And I see him really making a difference for the Lobos in the future. The second one that has committed is Isaac Williamson out of Eastvale, California, down south of here. He was a defensive player of the year in his conference last year. I think averaged around 13 points, 5 or 6 assists. So he is a playmaker, but more known for his defense at this point. Both guards, interestingly enough, are about the same size. 6 foot tall. It says 165 pounds, and that seems pretty small. But I think when you look at the Lobos roster right now, they really are lacking some depth at the guard position as far as like point guards. After you look past CJ Noland, who they had signing this year and who will be a freshman this year, but also expect Philly B to possibly play some point guard as well. So the guys that we the gentleman we missed out on last week was Jazir Rensher out here in the Bay Area. He decided to sign with Washington, and I believe there was also another player that signed with Texas A&M. So the Lobos did miss out last week on two bigger name wing players in my eyes. Rensher, maybe he's the one that went to A&M. Thanks for the help on that one. So I think the remaining guys we're looking at right now are Jaden Leverett and Winters Grady, to my knowledge, is still available, and he is a three-point shooter, taller wing player that scouts seem to be liking a lot at this point. And Leverett is more of a post player, shot blocker, athletic rebounder. I'll just show you. Let me see if this stays up here. If I need to reshare, I'll present it. I'm just going to take you guys a quick glimpse of what I think the roster is going to look like this year, and the minute distribution, so you can argue with me or not. So players returning. We got, of course, Mr. Donovan Dent, who'll be at Mountain West Media Days speaking, along with Nelly Jr. Joseph. Also returning, we got Mountain West Conference Sixth Man of the Year, Mustafa Amzil. Mr. Applehans is back. True Washington, I expect to start, and Quentin Webb also. Joining the team, CJ Noland, the transfer, was it from North Texas, Tamari, I believe? Is he from North Texas, Tamari
North
Noland?
Texas, yeah.
He looks to be a scorer. I would look for him to start. Two top freshmen coming in, Milicevic, the big man, seems to have dropped some weight over the past few months. Very agile, can score at all three levels, but he is also massive. When I saw his legs in those pictures Eric took, he looked like he has tree trunks stuffed into sneakers. Dodson is the freshman point guard. I could see him possibly getting a few minutes. It's hard to say at this point without seeing him at the college level, but they're kind of, like I mentioned, don't have a lot of depth at ball handling position in my eyes, so he might get some minutes. Philly B, the transfer from Arizona, new player who we expect to play. Daniel Thomas, incoming freshman from Texas. Triple A, Ali Atiki. I look for him to get solid minutes off the bench. He's aggressive rebounder and shot blocker, and also found out on Go Lobos he's a married man as of last February, so very mature at 22 or 23, already married, but will be, I think, getting a lot of minutes off the bench at the post, spelling Nelly and Amzo. Other transfer, Ibrahim Sacco from Georgia Tech. He is built like a linebacker. He didn't really have a great offensive season or, showing at Georgia Tech, but I think he could possibly get some minutes at post just because of his build and what he brings. The three walk-ons, to my knowledge, these could be wrong, is Shane Dumas Sanchez, returning DA, and bringing in Dylan Chavez from Albuquerque. And when I'm thinking about the minutes here, I'm looking at, obviously, Dent and Nelly to start as their returning starters. True starting along with CJ and Amzil. I think Amzil will get the start because he's the returner with a lot of shooting ability as well. What I see is lacking most on this roster. Coming off the bench, I'll see Philly B getting a good dose of minutes if he doesn't start. And AAA, obviously, coming in at post, possibly the freshman Jovan. And then as far as the other guards that are going to get minutes, it's really a mix-up for me. I would like to see Quentin Webb, the 6'6" guard from California, who's shown that he can really play, in my eyes, can shoot. I think he just needs more of an opportunity this year, and hopefully he gets it. And then Sacco, as we mentioned, transfer from Georgia Tech. So that's what I'm looking at, Tamari. I don't know what you think of it. We're going to dive really deep into it next week at Media Days. We have a lot of in-depth stuff about all the teams in the conference and our outlook. So we're really looking forward to that.
No, I'm looking forward to that. Z Mountain Shadow, what happened to the guy from North Texas? That's CJ Nolan. I mean, he's got to be in this mix for the starter. They really like his shooting ability. And he did that at North Texas. North Texas was known under Grant McCaslin. They were known for playing defense. So I don't know. I think basketball is a little funny where it won't be as hidden. Again, you have 12 guys, 12, 15 guys. I would imagine it's Dent, Amzil, CJ Nolan. I think somebody said Philip Borovichevin. I don't know about that. I mean, and then Nelly. I don't know. You have two bigs in there. I still think this team is pretty stacked. And I've said that, and I've been pretty open about it. I would imagine there'll probably be 2 or 3 in the conference. I think Boise State will be picked to win it. Omar Stanley and Tyson Degenhart will be there. He's in the family of farts with Fart Collins, Fart Worth, Tyson Degenfart, Jackson Fart, Kirby Fart. So he's in the Fart family. But I like Tyson Degenhart a lot. And he was really a pleasure to talk to.
They added the point guard from San Jose State, Cardenas, since
That's
Anderson
right,
transferred. And, everyone, including BJ Rains, is really big on what Cardenas is going to add to this team and in terms of leadership and distribution. And to my surprise, everyone is saying that Degenhart might play more time at the 3, which is bizarre to me. But I guess with their roster makeup, which we'll look at next week, they really have a lot of big guys, and he might slide down to the 3, which is okay because he can shoot. But in my eyes, I don't see that as his best position because he can also bang down low. So we shall see.
The players for each team next week at Mountain West Conference Basketball Media Days and the West Coast Conference will be there too. Obviously, all the head coaches, the new head coaches are Jared Calhoun at Utah State, Sundance Wicks at Wyoming, and then Vance Wahlberg from Fresno State. Vance Wahlberg had coached at a high school. Coach has said continuously that Philip is 1, 2, 3, not 4 or 5.
I think that's what I just said. So thank you.
Yeah, God. thank you, Jimmy H. Players that will be there, I'll some of the bigger names. I'm looking forward to talking to Joe Scott, Leon Rice, Nico Medved. They were all fantastic last year. Tyson Degenhart, Omar Stanley will be available. Nick Clifford, Jalen Lake from Colorado State.
I guess I did. Wait, I take that back. Sorry, Jimmy H. I did say he could play the 1, and we shall see. I think he will. You're right. Coach has not said that. Apologies, Jimmy. Sorry to cut you off, Tamari.
No, you're good. Donovan Dent and Nelly Jr. Joseph will be there from UNM. From Nevada, Trey Coleman, Nick Davidson, San Diego State, Miles Bird. I'm excited to talk to Miles Bird. Reese Waters Sr. He's Reese Waters Sr. now. From UNLV. The 2 guys I think we're looking to talk to the most, that we're most excited for, is Dean Thomas Jr. and Rob Wally Jr. from UNLV. Rob Wally is like Rain Man to me. He's like, I don't know, the way he dunks and plays. I'm excited for him. Those are the big names for that. And again, all the coaches, we're deciding what we're going to do next week. As far as coverage of Mountain West Conference Football Media Days, Jacob Neff and I will be there out there Tuesday. We'll do a live show Tuesday from Resorts World in Vegas. I'm not sure how much we'll talk to women's basketball. I've only done this once. It was kind of dead. We'd love to talk to UNM and Mike Bradbury and see what we can do basketball wise. Might have to bug JJ Buck, friend of ours, friend of usual suspect here on the show, or was. He's the voice of, obviously you can catch him with Jeff and JJ on weekday mornings on the opening drive on 610. But he's the voice of the UNM women's basketball team. Jimmy H, no problem. Rick, you the man. Ronnie.
You're the man, Jimmy.
You're the man, Jimmy. Ronnie Chavez. Mike Gundy says college football should follow how the NFL operates. What do you mean by that? I don't know, Rick. You're shaking your head. You might know something that I saw.
I hadn't heard anything about Mike Gundy other than Oklahoma State being utter trash this year. So.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be much better. So many returning starters. And you and I are Mike Gundy's. I
love
just
him, man. So yeah, I'm sad about it.
I'm 40. The mullet, and then obviously the Ollie Gordon. I've driven like that 1,000 times. watch his press conference. I'll have to check it out. I didn't see anything that popped up on that today, but this is a Mike Gundy house. Going back to college football before we get before we get out of here. Fat. That's why this is Jacob Neff on UNM opening at 2.5-point favorites on Saturday to Air Force. Now it's 6.5. Neff's response is that's way too much for someone that can't stop anything. Yeah, that's a big swing, man. That's 4 points pretty much early in the week. I don't know. Rick, do you have any fun?
You're kind of freezing up here. I
Final
don't know.
thoughts tonight.
Yeah. Final thought. Just looking forward to basketball season coming up. So you guys just keep sending in your questions on the chat during the show because it helps us think of stuff to chat about. But just looking forward to projecting basketball here and getting football moving. I think the next 4 or 5 games for the Lobos look promising as far as being able to win those ones. So looking forward to the next month.
I am at this time next week. Jacob Neff and I will be in Las Vegas, Nevada. You will be there with us Thursday morning, and then we get out of there. I'm in Vegas next week, and then I turn around 3 weeks later, and I'm there for the UCLA game. And then after that, I literally get back, and then I'm on a plane to the most beautiful and sacred place in all of the country, Newark, New Jersey. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to land and see the oil refineries. Tough loss for UNM women basketball. Cincinnati transfer out for the year.
I did.
She was going to be the closer. I did not see that. I guess, Rick, maybe you saw that and can comment on that.
I can't recall her name right now. I did read about it. She was, I think, a 3-year player from Cincinnati that was expected to start this year. Let me pull her name up here. But I think for a Lobo roster that's already had so much turnover, you can't really afford to be losing a player that you're projecting as a starter. So I can't find her name right now. Let me pull it up. But yeah, it's just going to be a tall hill to climb. They lost their leading scorers from last year. But, that'll provide a lot of opportunity. Her name is Clarissa Craig, a 6'3" forward, and unfortunately a senior from Cincinnati, Ohio, and was also from high school there. So hope she can recover quickly. Hope someone can step up in her space.
I went to the Albuquerque Journal, and the headline was "What's happening with Marble Brewery?" I haven't been to Marble Brewery in years. Was going to go to the sports page, but I will be at Ronnie Chavez, at Lobo Ronnie. I will be watching the Mets again. I know I own some San Diego Padres paraphernalia, and I've mentioned it. Tony Gwynn's my favorite player. It will be very painful because I do like this Padres team. I'm a Manny Machado guy. Tony Gwynn is my favorite baseball player of all time. I've mentioned that a million times on here. I saw him hit a walk-off home run. And kind of Charles Barkley-esque, like a round mound of rebound. He was round and hit the ball and played defense very well. Very good baseball player. And he played basketball at San Diego State. But when you see somebody hit a walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth in person like that, it was very cool. It's the highlight of probably everything I've seen sports-wise. I'm knee-deep in the MLB postseason. I love it. My postseason Mets hat will be here tomorrow. I think if they were to get the Dodgers, maybe the Mets could do it. And I'm not trying to be biased. Again, this team was 24-35 until Grimace threw out a pitch throughout the opening pitch, the ceremonial first pitch. And if you didn't see him get on the 7 line today with McDonald's and all the guys on the 7 line, it was great. It was great today, Grimace. And then Hawk to a girl was here, but we don't want to talk about her. I believe they lost that game that she threw out the ceremonial first pitch. I'm looking forward to, I have future bets on the Yankees. So, I'm in a funny world right now. If the Mets can figure out how to do it, it would be probably I enjoyed the 2 Giant Super Bowl runs, but man, the Mets would be up there for me. I'm looking forward to college basketball. I'm looking forward to talking to all the players at Mountain West Conference basketball media days next week. Tomorrow night, kid seats are only $5. Nick and Ed Nunez will return with their Road to the Pit, or a high school basketball journey, but we have incorporated, it sounds like a political ad because it says one thing and then we do another. We've incorporated all high school sports in that. Elijah Hansen from Volcano Vista, he's the quarterback there. My understanding is they're having a phenomenal year. Again, I don't pay that much close attention to high school athletics here in the state of New Mexico. I was trying to, and then, I'm watching college football on Friday nights and Saturday, and the NFL is Sunday, and the MLB postseason. Hockey started today. Who are you a fan of? Utah Hockey Club. So it's that wonderful time of year where tons of sports are going on. That second inning was just stupid. How is there no interference for running inside the baseline on the grass to any other, but it's interference when you can run the grass for a bat? I think it was a mistake for Dave Roberts to start Walker Buehler. Ask Jacob Neff that. Then tomorrow night, Jalen Dominguez and Mackenzie Bishop will be joining us. Jalen Dominguez, obviously, of course, head of the Lobo Club. He's vying for the athletic director position. Eric knows him. I think he had classes with him. So, again, that's a great guest. We tried to change it up last week. It was a little different. We had the usual suspects. But happy to have everybody on tonight. Ben Wysong, Nick Coppola, and Mr. Dr. John Barnes, and Rick Thompson. Richard. Rick, I'm going to do it again. Jerry Springer, any more final thoughts? Or are you good to go?
No, just your Air Force guest. Is his
Sean
name
O'Toole.
Sean. He's really fantastic. I always like when he comes on. He knows a lot about football. It's always amazing to hear him talk.
I had to text him tonight because he's not a full-time reporter, but I was like, man, you come across as if you cover the team full-time. So, so Sean, if you're still watching, I know it's like 12:30 on the East Coast. Really appreciate you, man. I enjoy always having him on. So again, Sean O'Toole, Dr. John Barnes, Ben Wysong, Nick Coppola. Again, we'll be back tomorrow night. Elijah Hansen, Volcano Vista quarterback. We'll get that out. Jalen Dominguez and Mackenzie Bishop from 505 Sports Venture Foundation. Jalen Dominguez from UNM Athletic Department. My name's Ryan Tamori, and this is Rick Thompson. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Everybody have a great Tuesday. Have a safe Wednesday. We are out of here.